Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll call the May 5th Select Board meeting to order. I don't believe there's any changes to the agenda. Can you hear me okay? Is that working? Okay. Announcements?
Thank you. This meeting is being video and audio recorded. We have vacancies on committee, board, and commissions. There is a lot of information on the town website. There's a sheet right here on the screen of what the openings are. The board has a public hearing tonight on public hearing number 2 of committee applications, and at the board's meeting on June 19th, the annual appointments will be made, but people still potentially have time to apply if they are interested. People potentially have more time to apply for some of the committees, boards, and commissions if they are still interested. I'm sorry to say that item number 3 of announcements, the new fire department opening day at the public safety facility at Fort Fairgrounds Road, right here, we had been working to schedule a open house opening day on June 15th, Saturday, June 15th, and it appears as though that will have to be delayed. There are a number of items that remain incomplete with the project, some delays. I don't know if the chief would like to speak to that, but they are beyond our control, and we really want to have a station that is complete for people to look at and walk through and have a opening ceremony. So
the most important part is having a station that's at a caliber we can be proud of the show and not under construction still. Major items such as the climate control in the building isn't even close to finished. It's getting 5 different subcontractors together to make sure that it gets put in the service the correct way, as well as a lot of other items such as the asphalt for the ramps and the front, all the asphalt services, and just competing projects that are a little more important than ours right now. So we want to make sure that when we open the station, it's ready to open and it's as a shining jewel as it should be.
I don't think we have a date yet, but we're working towards it, and we're hoping that these items can be completed by the end of the month, and we'll be back to the board with a new date. We've got some ongoing road work. The sewer project roads, specifically Vesper Lane, Hummock Pond, and potentially starting Monomoy Road. These roads are getting their top coats very shortly. I don't know that we have a specific date yet.
Good evening, everyone. We actually started Vesper Lane today. We got all the way up to, I believe, just shy of Somerset. So it has been paved, top coat both sides, all the way back to the intersection. Unfortunately, the contractor ran out of gravel today, so the project had to stop until a barge can get over because of the wind. So we're delayed again for a little bit. I don't have any future dates yet, but we're trying as quickly as we can. So.
Thank you, David. We obviously have a limited resource with the paver, and there are a lot of paving jobs going on right now, as we all know. The next board meeting is Wednesday, June 19th. The board is on its summer schedule now, beginning with June. That is 2 meetings per month. The schedule is posted online. We've got some follow-up reports from public safety and other town departments as to the 2019 Wine Festival and Memorial Day weekends. Chief's going to kick us off.
I'll bring the best news. Good evening. The Wine Festival weekend, we had a few issues with it. Mainly, we had some issues with the way the Wine Festival is using volunteers at the doors or lack thereof. They start out with some and then they disappear pretty quickly in the evening. We had some concerns about lack of professional security. They did hire some police details, but their police details aren't there to provide that type of security for these kind of events. And we had a pretty intensive discussion with the hotel license holders and the wine festival on Saturday night, which seemed to straighten things up pretty considerably thereafter. So next year we're going to have a meeting with the wine festival promoters coming up, I believe, towards the end of June, to do a debrief and to kind of set the stage for what they're going to be required to have next year, which is going to require them to be more like the Fagawi organization in terms of how they provide paid professional security for inside the tent and how and all the other things instead of just volunteers. When it came to activity, we had virtually, last year and this year were virtually identical. We had 13 in custody arrests or summonses or PCs that were made during the time period of the wine festival. On Memorial Day weekend, we really only had it's different than wine festival weekend because there's considerably more people here for Memorial Day. But we really only had an issue with one establishment, primarily downtown on the Straight Wharf area, that was overcrowded, and many of the incidents we did have that resulted in arrests or PCs seem to have originated out of that facility. So we had that organization in for a meeting with the fire department, the building department, and the police department right after that, and we went over our concerns and our observations and got assurances from them they will make corrections. Also, they were put on notice that we're going to be paying real close attention to them throughout the summer, because this wasn't just a one-off thing. That was really the only main issue we had. And then as far as arrests, PCs, summonses, everything else goes, last year was pretty much like the prior year. Actually, we had 3 fewer arrests this year. We had 27 last year and 24 this year over the 4-day Memorial Day weekend. So for the police perspective, we thought it was pretty good.
Wine festival for us, the only issues we had were really at the beginning with the setup. My fire prevention officer going down and doing inspections and finding some of the last minute things that were being done, so they weren't really ready at the time of the inspection. We're going to address that in the debrief as well. As for Memorial Day weekend, the Fagawi event we had no issues with. We did have issues, as Chief Pittman said, with one establishment grossly overcrowding an area, and that was addressed in that meeting that we had with them. And a couple other establishments not just keeping proper numbers at their doors, but we addressed it with them. So outside of that, we were really good.
Thank you.
Public health.
This year with the wine festival, same issue that we had last year, just a lot of purveyors showing up, some that are not permitted. So we ended up having to ask some of those people to either stop polling, stop giving out samples or things like that. This year there was a timing issue. So next year we're gonna reach out so that we can get our permits in a lot sooner. We were still permitting people the day before the event started because the permits were turned in so late. We would prefer if they started permitting in around March, we can start getting those preliminary information earlier, just to make the burden a little bit less on our department. It turned into a pretty hard week. With Memorial Day weekend, it wasn't that bad. We had one person trying to set up a mobile food within the area there, which is not allowed. It's within 500 feet of another establishment. But other than that, both events went off pretty well. It was just little organization, little things here and there, but nothing really crazy. So it went well.
Thank you, Roberto. I don't know if DPW had anything. Did you have anything, Rob? No, okay. And I didn't get much back from other departments, so I think those are the main issues.
Next is the public comment portion of our agenda for anything that is not otherwise on our agenda for discussion. Okay, seeing none, I don't believe that there's any new business. we'll move on to approval of minutes. Do we just have May 8th? Do we have both? Okay.
Move approval?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Approval of payroll warrants and treasury warrants.
Move to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Pending contracts? Is there anything that anyone has questions on?
Move to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Consent items. This is just a ratification of 18 Tacoma to become a SHI unit, SHI eligible, subsidized housing inventory. Does anybody have any questions?
No, I would move to approve the ratification. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And my only comment is it's great to see that we've asked for some of this to happen and it's happening. It's very important, and sometimes in the past it took a little while or they didn't happen. And I think people realize the importance of this now, of getting these units on the SHI and making sure that they count. So I'm glad to see that it's done.
We have a public hearing scheduled for an HDC appeal, which we're going to open the public hearing, but no, we're not going to open it. We're just going to reschedule it. So it's going to get it re-advertised or? Okay. Then we will move on to public hearing to consider applications for a number of different boards. Let me just get to the right page.
Yes.
Is it in here? Okay. Okay, first up, Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust. We have one seat available, and Brooke Moore, the incumbent, has applied. I don't think that she's
not here
tonight.
Yeah, she's away.
So
Madam Chair, did you want to see if there was anybody here from last week that wanted to, or did you want to do that at the end?
we could do it.
Okay, so I just didn't know if you knew. There's somebody here. Okay.
No one had contacted me.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
I'm open to that. Let's just run through these first.
Sure.
Nantucket Historical Commission. We have 7 seats available, and we have 8 applicants. Mary Bergman, Georgia Raisman, Angus McLeod, David Silver, Milton Rowland, Clement Dirks, Thomas Murray Montgomery, Hillary Hedges Rayport. Would anyone like to introduce themselves?
Madam
Or
Chair, I'm just
say
going to
anything?
note that Ms. Raisman emailed that she's unable to attend.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Bergman. I work at the Nantucket Preservation Trust. And I think just in the last, I'm really excited about the idea of getting this historical commission reactivated. I've been serving on the sidewalk work group as we talk about what's going on at Upper Main. I think there's a lot of programs like this that are projects that would fit into the historical commission. And I also wanted to note in my application that I am also on the board of the South Church Preservation Fund. I think I failed to include that on my potential conflicty thing. So that's it.
Thank you. Anybody else? You don't have to, but you're welcome to. Okay.
Hi, I'm Hillary Hedges Rayport, and I just wanted to echo what Mary said, which is I'm really excited about the opportunity to serve on the Historical Commission and contribute to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. So next up is the Nantucket Historical Commission alternate. I would note that there are 8 applicants for 7 seats, so this one no one's applied for, so hopefully one person will be willing to accept the alternate seat when we make the appointments. Then next is Planning Board alternate. There's 1 seat available. Campbell Sutton, the incumbent, has applied. Hi.
I'm just here in case I, whoops, okay. So you guys have read my application thing, and so I'm just here in case anyone has any questions that they want to ask me about it. I've really appreciated my time over the last year, and hope I can continue for 3 years.
Thank you.
Is that it?
Real Estate Assessment Committee. We have one seat available, one applicant. Lee Saperstein has applied. I know he couldn't be here tonight. He did reach out to me. Then we have Roads and Right-of-Way Committee. We have 3 seats available, and the 3 incumbents have applied. Bill Greeter, Rick Atherton, who is in California, he reached out, and Alan Reinhard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm Alan Reinhardt. I've been chairman of the Roads and Right-of-Way Committee since 2005. And over those years, we've accomplished a number of things. The granite public way monuments that you've seen, we've placed, at this point, 36 of the upright ones, and I believe 8 of the flush ones in the ground in various public ways. One of the reasons that I re-up for the committee, because I have to confess that I'm looking to kind of peel off some of the meetings that I have to go to. By the way, I've never missed a meeting of the Roads and Right-of-Way Committee over the years that I've served on it. The main focus is on public access. That's one of the main things that we deal with. People come to us all the time with issues that are usually neighborhood issues, right-of-way issues, blocking, sight lines and that sort of thing. So if you have any questions about the committee, I'll be happy to answer them.
None for me.
Nothing?
No.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Alan.
Thank you.
Next up is Scholarship Committee. We have 3 seats available, and only the one, Jean Miller, who's an incumbent, has applied. So if anyone's interested in that, they should consider it. Town Government Study Committee. Okay. Why, that's not in, I just must have the wrong version. 1 seat available, 1 applicant, the incumbent, Nat Lowell. I don't see him here. Then next up, Town Government Study Committee. This does have a vacancy and no one's applied, if anyone is interested in that. Tree Advisory Committee, 2 seats and 3 applicants. Jeff Smith, John Schichtel, I apologize if I'm butchering anyone's name, and Mary Longacre. I see Mary here.
Hi, Mary Longacre. I served on the Tree Advisory Committee in the 90s, and my primary purpose for applying was just to make sure that there would be no empty seats. So if the incumbents have reapplied, I don't have an issue with that. I don't have any particular issue about being on the committee. I just wanted to make sure that the seats would be filled, and I was willing to serve in case I was needed. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Last up, we have the Zoning Board of Appeals. There's 1 seat available and 1 applicant, Ed Toole, and he reached out and said that he could not be here tonight, but he would like to continue to serve. Zoning Board alternate, James Mandani, and he has reapplied. And I don't see him here this evening. And now, if there's anyone here who did not get to speak last week who's applied for something.
Hi, I'm Jill Veith, and I applied for, I guess I don't have to lean over. And I applied to be on FinCom, and I know most of you, but not necessarily very well. And I applied because I wanted be involved, and I care about the island. I'm a business owner here, and I'm involved with my church, Summer Street Church, so I know a lot of people in the community through that, and the Spiritual Heritage Nantucket, which funds the community dinners that we have. I'm on the board of the Artists Association of Nantucket, so I think I bring kind of a different background than maybe some of your other applicants, and I hope you'll consider me. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, or you can ask me now. So, thanks for the chance.
Thank you very much.
Hi, thanks everyone. Barry Rector. Hope you're having a good evening. Just a few things. First of all, I put in an application to the Board of Health, and I'd like to tonight formally request that be withdrawn. After thinking about things for a little bit, Malcolm McNabb, I think, has been doing a great job as the chair there, and I think he deserves another chance at doing it. So I'd just like to formally ask that you please withdraw that request for me. Thinking things over, I did put an application into the Conservation Commission, and I don't know if you have any questions about that. Hopefully the application speaks for itself. All right, thanks everyone.
Barry.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Barry.
Close the public hearing?
I think so.
Close the public hearing? Okay, and we'll be making those appointments on June 19th. Thank you to everyone who's applied, and there are still some vacancies and plenty of time between now and the 19th. Okay, next, public hearing to consider the permanent installation of stop signs at the intersection of Surfside Road and Bartlett Road, creating a three-way stop. They've been in since April, late April. And we've gotten a couple of letters, but not a lot. But anyone is welcome to come up and speak about this. It's a public hearing.
Hi.
Yep, go.
Hi, I'm
adjust
Judy
that.
Zerheide. I use Surfside bicycling, walking, and driving, and I've really enjoyed the stop signs there. At first, it was a little shock to be stopped. I usually travel from South Shore and Surfside to town, and I really enjoyed stopping or being stopped at the Muse and having it go really quickly and knowing it was a safe transition through the intersection. And even coming back the other way was all right. So I like it. Thanks.
Hi, good evening. My name is Chris Finese, and I live at 8 McLean Lane. McLean is just one street off of Bartlett Road, and I have a different opinion about the stop sign. To me, it seems like it's creating another choke point on Surfside Road. It backs up sometimes as far as the high school, and it's very slow moving, and it's actually more dangerous for us now to try to get out of McLean or Tashima, because there's such a line of cars. You cannot see whether or not it's clear for you to dart out and go up towards the high school or go south towards a stop sign. So I would just ask your reconsideration. I think it's created more of a choke point than was currently at the intersection. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Sally Ann Austin, and I'm at 19 Surfside. And as most of you know, I've been asking for 3 years for the stop signs to be put in. I actually do like them. I have to go out to my Comet Ave on a regular basis, and I think it depends what time of day that it is backing up. I live right across from the high school. I've never seen it back up to the high school or past the high school. In fact, I just came through it on my way over here at 6 o'clock, and it was just me and one other person at that intersection. I had more of a backup at Surfside Drive with people trying to turn down Surfside Drive. It was more backed up there tonight. It does get backed up going towards Sparks. We do get quite backed up. I think some of the road work that's being done in that area probably doesn't help, but it's been more congested on the Sparks end than it has been at the Bartlett Road end. I haven't had a problem with it. I think it's probably a good thing for people to be stopped in a school district. It makes it so much easier coming out of Bartlett Road. When I come back from Bartlett Farm, I have to come down Bartlett Road. It's so nice to finally be able to get out of Bartlett Road. So from that direction, I think it really is helping. I just think it's a lot better than having a rotary put in. I'm not minding it. I think every intersection right now this time of year is going to be backed up, whether it's Sparks Ave, Bartlett Road, Surfside Drive, Fairgrounds Road. We all seem to just be backed up no matter where we are right now. So I actually like it. Thanks.
How you doing? Dave Bell at 31 Tajma Lane. As you can see right here, they're backed up quite a ways. Again, McLean Lane's right next to us. Trying to get out of Tajma Lane, McLean, it's tough. People not even paying attention to they're paying attention to what's in front of you. Just tonight, leaving about 4:30, 4:45 to go for a ride and go for a walk and whatnot. These people wouldn't even let you out of Tajma Lane. Again, coming back from work, it's probably about a Muse. I'm backed up probably at 3, probably closer to 4 o'clock. And you go by Bartlett Road and there's maybe 2 cars there. And I think it's happening more in the morning, afternoon, evening, basic rush hour time pretty much. So it's maybe just reconsider it. I don't know, maybe, I don't think you do a stop sign at some times and not all the times type of thing, but it's not even summertime yet. You're going to have vehicles probably backed right up to the high school and whatnot. So just for a person that lives in the area. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Toby Brown. I don't want to say I like stop sign, who the hell does, but I think they work good for the area. I drive, I do service work. I do agree with the two that live on McLean and Tasman. It must be kind of a pain, but I just want to speak on my personal opinion of it is that I drive by a lot throughout the day service-wise, back and forth. In fact, me and my coworker, he hates it, and we always argue, and every time I drive through the stop sign, I'll be like, oh my God, there's one car, that's a disaster. And when they first came out, I started to take little notes, and I would write down 3 cars, 2 cars. And I really have not seen a big problem except for peak hours. And peak hours are the same. I mean, anybody who says that we don't have a ton of traffic in the morning, school time, beach time, wherever on this island. But my biggest thing is the safety of the kids. And that's really, I could care less about the stop sign, if it's there or not there, but I do care about the safety of the kids. I have a 14-year-old. She'll be gone in 4 years, college, whatnot, but I actually do care about the other, anybody knows me, I care about the other kids as well. But maybe there is a happy medium. I know everybody hates the word, but maybe a stoplight, maybe now in peak areas, but I just think it's a good safety thing. I know that, bottom line is, we all need to pay more attention driving anyways, and with all the devices these days, I don't think people are paying attention, and I just care about the kids. And I remember one of the crossing guard got hit by a car, I don't know, a couple of years ago. So, but anyways, thank you.
Thanks.
Mary Longacre. I live off of Vesper Lane, so my primary intersection is where Vesper Lane touches Surfside. And anecdotally, I think it is now easier for me to turn from Vesper onto Surfside going into town because the traffic coming from Surfside is being metered by the stop sign at Bartlett Road. And so that's an unexpected, or maybe not unexpected, but it's an ancillary benefit outside of that particular intersection that is, I think, relieving a little bit of the pressure as the traffic that would be coming inbound would stack up in front of the high school at Sparks Avenue instead. So I appreciate that little relief that I have.
So I live off of Bartlett. I live on 30 Acres Lane. And if we remember on town meeting floor, Dr. Lepre talked about how sometimes it'll be backed up to his property at 4.5 Bartlett Road, where his office used to be, which is a little bit closer to the intersection from 30 Acres. And yes, at peak hours, it's worse. At off hours, it's actually pretty good. It's, one or two coming in from Bartlett. But at peak hours, going into work every morning, it is backed up past 30 Acres. When I'm getting out of my own house, I have to actually stop and wait till somebody lets me onto Bartlett. And then I actually started timing it where it takes about 15 minutes from the intersection of 30 Acres and Bartlett to get to the stop sign this morning alone. So it's actually gotten from the Bartlett side going into town at the peak hours, it's gotten a lot worse. Off hours, it's gotten a lot better. To be absolutely honest, when it's the traffic's flowing and like Mary Longacre said, getting onto off of Vesper onto Surfside on those off-peak hours is a lot better because it's slowing the cars down. But at peak hours, it's tough. It's really rough. So it's just my 2 cents.
I'm Campbell Sutton, and I proposed the citizens article for the stop sign here. So when I've been in this position right here that you're seeing in this photograph, it has taken less than 2.5 minutes to get to and through the stop sign. Many of the cars that are in the line of traffic are turning onto Bartlett Road. They're taking rights and lefts, so a lot of the traffic backup. I think one of the things that I've noticed recently, because at first, people were sort of blowing through it and going, what? And some people sit there for a long time going, what do I do here? So I think they're sort of getting used to the idea that it's there. I give it a good 4 count, and I go, if it's clear to go, but some people may give it a 10 count, so that helps back it up a little bit. And in the other one with the backup, that is the other photo here, there's one that backs up past around the corner of the high school. And that one is clearly during school hours here. So I'm not sure that it's reflective of backup at the elementary school, which, when I used to substitute teach there, has always been bad. There really isn't a good time when kids are getting dropped off or parents are picking kids up. Not enough people take the school bus was what I thought. But but again, I think that if the traffic keeps moving, yes, it does back up. So I get that. So this morning I happened to be at about 8:20. I was going down Hooper Farm Road, and I thought, I'm here at Waydale, and I'm in a traffic jam going into a rotary. Jam's a little excessive, I guess. But anyway, so I timed it, and it took me 3 minutes and 35 seconds to get from Waydale through the rotary just to the other side, So you're coming out Hooper Farm, and you're just taking that right. So it took me 3 minutes and 35 seconds for that short distance at 8:20 in the morning. It then took me 4 minutes, so a total from Waydale to get onto Milestone Road took me 4 minutes and 53 seconds. So all I'm trying to say is it's not like there aren't backups on the island that everyone has to work with. And we know that coming in April, all the workers start to arrive for the landscaping and building, and so, traffic really builds up until June when the school lets out, and then we get a little bit of relief. So I get the backup. I sort of feel like maybe the people on McLean's and Tashma now know how the people on Bartlett felt. And I do feel for them entirely. I'm not sure how a rotary assists any of that to pick up all the driveways that are along that way, but that's a different discussion. Some of the inadvertent things that I've noticed. One, I find that people traveling between the stop signs from Sparks to the Bartlett are going slower. They're doing the 20 mile an hour that is posted there instead of coming in from the fairground stop sign at 35, 40 miles an hour and going, oh yeah, maybe I should slow down by the time they get to the Sparks. So I think that's a real benefit for pedestrians and bicyclists, which really was what this was about, was the safety of everyone at that intersection. Another thing I've noticed is that fewer cars are turning around and going to use Essex or Friendship for an alternate route because they know they're going to get out of Bartlett. So now those streets are more, the traffic there is more residential. If I go down Fairgrounds, I'm not running into a massive UPS truck on Somerset that's trying to get around the traffic issues because the traffic, I think, is flowing. I think the transportation people who had a letter in your packet as well sort of attested to the fact that, yes, it is a slowdown, but it's not like you're dead in the water. You keep moving, and it hasn't affected their schedule yet. I know they're going to be looking through the summer to see if there's a greater negative impact on their timing, which again, we have, July, I think, April through Labor Day is just, it's traffic, and you really have to take a deep breath, and the 15 minutes is a very long time to wait. I haven't experienced that, but then I leave later or earlier. So, let me see. So I think that was about it. Does anybody have any questions for me since I put this concept forward? No?
No.
Okay.
So you think it's made it safer?
I do. I think the guy that's walking every morning reading his book while he walks, that guy, he just goes right through there. Doesn't miss a beat, So I know it's more convenient for him, but also for bicyclists, and people have time to become aware of people on the bike path, which I think has really been key, because you've stopped long enough to check. Oh, and anecdotally, my mother, who is 88, is able to get out of Bartlett Road without almost getting hit because she's not a fast driver, so she's not stepping on the gas to broom out of Bartlett onto Surfside. So that's just another thing that was good. And my apologies to the Tash McLean Lane people. So.
Good evening. Rob McNeil, DPW. It may seem obvious, but I want to thank the board for being supportive of yet another transportation experiment to get some actual data to make a decision. And I also wanted to report that I was glad to say that DPW was able to do this installation at a substantial less cost than was spelled out by Ms. Sutton in her article. So thank you.
Anybody else?
I just want to say I don't think this picture represents it in all fairness, because this looks like it was on a rainy, foggy morning, and for some reason, being that I've lived right there for 52 years, when it rains, people tend to drive their kids to school. I don't know if we have this mentality that they're going to melt while they're walking down the bike path, but for some reason, every time it rains or snows, the traffic quadruples. So I don't think that's a real fair representation of the daily traffic there.
Anybody else? Are we ready to close the public hearing on this?
I'll add one more comment. I had Toby's coworker emailed me earlier and said that Toby was wrong. So he wanted to make sure he had the last word tonight.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. So our options are to either make the stop signs permanent, take the stop signs out, or extend the trial period of the stop signs, which is another potential suggestion of doing it through the summer to see how it performs.
I would like to extend it if possible. That would be my position. I think that I use that intersection regularly, and I have felt a significant improvement in safety for cyclists, for pedestrians, and for anyone coming off of Bartlett. I've noticed, particularly around 5 p.m., there is a backup, and it would be interesting to see how that offsets with beach traffic. But I would like to see them stay through the summer and see how that goes.
I agree with Rita. I think we need to see how it goes through the summer. I'm kind of leaning towards, at first I didn't like the idea, but listening to everybody, going through it myself, I think it's, I'm leaning towards keeping them permanently, but I would like to see if there's any significant changes in the summer.
Yeah. I was going to say, kind of similar to Jason, at first I was very much against these, and I don't use Surfside that much, so I haven't really experienced it, and the few times I have, I've almost gone right through them. So I would like to keep them for the summer, and if we do, make sure that there's a little bit more signage. I don't know. I know there's a red flag on it, but I don't know if there's anything else or another sign that says stop sign ahead, even further closer or further away from the stop sign to prepare people to stop. I don't know if that's a DPW issue. The only thing that did concern me was one of the letters asked if it was going to delay any of the EMTs getting to the hospital, and that was just something I was kind of interested in hearing from public safety if they've had any issues. I did talk to police, and there's asked for some data. There's actually been less accidents this year compared to last year in this area. There was 1 accident versus 4, so it is slowing people down and causing it to be a little safer. But I didn't know if public safety had any comments about the EMTs, or if they could comment.
The chief's shaking his head.
The fortunate and unfortunate part of when we get traffic like this, we drive in the left lane. The biggest part is that's why you hear lots of lights and siren. We're driving into that left lane of oncoming traffic a lot often. In places like this, and one of the big things with development, especially along the Old South Road, is areas of refuge for cars to pull off to give us passageways. But as right now, I haven't been told by my personnel that there's been any issue getting through there.
Okay, so I'd be in favor in continuing it through the summer, maybe a July or August meeting.
Yeah, I'm in favor of doing the same thing. I think people need to realize we added 500 more excise tax cars this past year. Brian told us that a few weeks ago. So we had 500 more cars peak season last summer. That doesn't count cars from off island and other cars. So we can't, this is my take on it, is we can't use traditional move more cars more quickly, and think that we're going to quote unquote solve our traffic problem. And I think we need to be thinking about grid patterns and an urban pattern, and this is the beginning of that. I think we need to connect more roads and have, more like downtown through some of these other areas, and find a way to, encourage people not to be driving as much. I think, that's where we're heading, and it's very difficult to get people to see that that's what we have to do. But I think this is a step in the right direction.
I agree. I'd like to continue the trial, and I spoke against them at town meeting, but I'll admit that I'm hearing extremely mixed reviews, and I have really mixed feelings. There are bad times with it, and then I see benefits with it. So, it's very indicative of everything I've seen tonight, what I've been thinking myself. It's lots of pros and cons. So I think seeing it through the summer is a really good idea. And then maybe bringing it back in September for further discussion.
I would make a motion.
Sorry, I just want to point out something. Our traffic rules and regulations give the board the authority to make temporary rules, which is what you did this under. And stop signs are something that the board can vote to temporarily install. However,
There's a limit.
unless the chief is going to correct this, no such temporary or experimental rule regulating traffic shall remain in effect for a period of time longer than 60 days. So I think what you need to do is vote, just simply vote to keep them in place at this point, which means we'll have to amend the regs and publish it in the paper and stuff. And then if in September you decide this isn't working out or whatever, then we would have another hearing.
Okay, so we would make them permanent now,
Pending.
but kind of with the understanding that we might bring it back
Correct.
for further discussion. Okay.
Okay, I would make a motion to make the stop signs permanent with a follow-up discussion in September.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out and for the feedback. It's very helpful.
Public hearing to consider application for modification of entertainment license for Fogworks LLC, DBA Keepers Restaurant, 5 Amelia Drive.
Good evening.
I'll open the public hearing.
Yes, we continued this from the last meeting due to the extended time of the last meeting. Applicants weren't able to stay yet. Okay, great. So this is a modification of an existing entertainment license for Keepers on Amelia Drive. The modification request is for live entertainment on their front patio and the restaurant for a limited number of special events. For a wedding or something of such that they like to hold at the restaurant. They currently have a streaming music only license. It started when prior to it being Keepers, the same owners were using it kind of for special events and theater performances, and we went through a similar type of hearing and decided there'd be no amplification or live entertainment on the front patio. It would just be, small performances and things of that such, and when they came as a restaurant, continued that as well. So it was ruled at that time to just be streaming music, which ends all music at 10 p.m. regardless. So their request, and the applicants are here this evening, is to allow them a limited number. They may have asked for like 5 additional limited events through the year to do so. As far as from our perspective, I think at first I was hesitant to kind of move forward with some of these one-off requests because we like to kind of move forward and define districts in the town and what entertainment's allowed in certain areas, because we are starting to do a lot of these one here, one there situations. As far as, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into the liquor regulations as well. So as I put in some of the recommendations and review is that in considering this too as well, it's certainly something that should be very limited. We have kind of the overview of that neighborhood and what's in that area too as well. There are residences above the stores across the way, behind those stores and behind the restaurant too as well. I think if something were considered, obviously 10 p.m. should be the absolute cutoff for something of this sort. If it's a limited number, once a month ability to be able to do something like that, say, I think for each time, like we do in a lot of these cases, we are notified, so obviously dispatch understands when this is allowed. But that a better notification should be done for each time something like this is done in a neighborhood, if it is considered at all. The closest license that might have something similar would be Saltbox. It's at Macy's Lane, so it's not obviously in the immediate vicinity, but that's going to be the closest thing. Or obviously you're going to start getting the Chicken Box, but that's interior music as well. So there's nothing right in that neighborhood that has something similar. So I will certainly let them explain. One other thing too, the background too, as far as history, we have had noise complaints since our opening for residences across the way above some of those stores. So those were dealt with at the time. It wasn't live music, but it was just noise, or in the parking lot or in the restaurant too as well.
Sorry, Amy, was that after 10 p.m., do you know?
I don't believe it was after 10. No,
Okay.
It wasn't a time violation. It was noise.
Just noise.
It was called in, and it was someone that came to me directly too in another time. So
Okay.
that one wasn't called in. To speak, the applicants, what they would like.
Hello, I'm Gavin Norton. We're just trying to do a small, like 5 times a year sort of thing. Some people have requested for weddings or for like sort of like graduation things. We close usually by 10, so music being off by 10, I want to go to sleep too, so it's nice to have it done early. We're not a bar really. It's mostly kind of a family restaurant, so these things are just like small little weddings. We're a little bit more affordable to some people, so all the music, all the drinks, everything's off on the patio at 10. And we tell everyone that, and they're like, oh, by 9:30, 10, we'll be gone. So that's what we're trying to do. I know one of our noise complaints was people in our parking lot playing music after we were closed. So that was one of those things that we found out about after the fact. We didn't even hear it inside cleaning up. And one of the complaints was our door closing. It's a really heavy door, so it made a loud noise, and it sounded like a bang every single time. So took care of that. Everything else, to my knowledge, it's not coming from the restaurants, either people in the parking lot waiting for a taxi on stroll weekend our first time, and the other one was the door. So that's really what we're trying to do.
Thanks. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the audience that wishes to speak? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. What's the pleasure of the board or questions?
I just want to confirm that that abutters were notified and no one responded.
I have no response.
Okay.
But I would, a couple things. It's something I would think that should be done regardless if they're doing this in the future for any sort of special event in that area. Something else too that we're discussing with the restaurants actually tomorrow too as well is any sort of thing such as this, it's going to be a change of use of some kind. We will ask for kind of the setup and layout for fire and building to review because it is a little different than what they're licensed for right now, so we can determine occupancy and that sort of thing as well too. So that would be a condition of any sort of approval.
Does the Salt Box have any conditions about days of the week or number of live events?
No, they do have to notify us though of live music and things of that sort. So they do have a notification on them as well. So it is meant to be limited. It has been getting more frequent, but I did receive 2 complaints on that last year. I have not had any issues thus far. So they've been communicating with us as they're doing it.
Okay.
I think a limited basis makes sense. You know, we kind of went on a limb a little bit, like for Island Kitchen when they had something new, you know, just to see how it goes. So I think limited makes sense. I think the earlier it closes, the higher the number could go up for me. Right? As an example, if the music was done, if it was during the day, music was done by 5 or 8, I could put up a number. But at 10 o'clock, I think 3 to 5, somewhere in there, makes sense to me. See how it goes. It's kind of in line with what we did with Island Kitchen in that scenario.
I'd be more comfortable with 3 to start, but I don't know if 5 is a magic number or, you know, what that means.
That's hard to determine sometimes if you want to think about frequency, if you're a neighbor, if it's a once a month situation that they're allowed, you know, to have that special event once a month in that neighborhood and see how that goes. You know, we hope to go to a point in time where we do have definitions per neighborhood as far as what we're allowing in certain neighborhoods, so folks go into business knowing what some of those parameters are, so that this will be revisited on a bigger picture area too as well. But I think it gives them that sense to start and be able to do some events that they're looking to do. And again, you know, I've talked to them, I know it's looking to be a wedding or something that they're able to do for folks that can't afford to go somewhere else, so that's an option there for them.
Yeah.
So you know, maybe once a month we did, you know, when Atlas started as far as that, adding some entertainment, we did do the only twice a month for them too as well, so that was a little bit easier to determine.
It was inside though. It was a little easier. Yeah.
Correct, but it was easier to do something of that sort. Then they can kind of plan because you're looking at dates and things of that sort. So that tended to be a little bit easier than kind of these one-offs, and especially for us, we're managing a lot of conditions and notifications, so that tends to be a little bit easier. And then for them planning too as well.
Okay.
For 3, is that through the end of this year, or is that for an entire year?
I think, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I mean, it could be either. Obviously, we're doing it for this calendar year, and upon renewal, should we want to revisit things in the renewal period, we can do so at the end of the year. It's an annual license. So that's something we do on several of them as well.
And then the other question, can you scroll back to the picture? Sorry, the first one. Oh, sorry, one more, yep. Will those be covered, the sides, or would it all be open with the music?
Do you have sides all the time, or there's no sides ever up in there? Yeah. Yeah. I haven't seen sides up, so
So all the sides on the entire thing can go down, and that kind of keeps it contained. And for the parties that we probably will do, we will roll it down because it makes us look more closed so people won't come in. And also our awning is just seasonal. There's no heat, no nothing. So we're not gonna really rent ourselves out in July and August like some of the bigger restaurants would. So it's not like this is something that we're gonna do often. It's the first time people have really come forward to us. So it's not like this is gonna be something that like every Monday night we're trying to have a live band. We're just trying to do it once in a while. So that's it. In the winter, we wouldn't even be able to do it. Anything would be inside. We don't really have room for a band, so wouldn't be anything that would really happen often.
I think this is it's a year-round business that's open year-round, and so they have to play well with the neighbors. And so I don't think, just my gut feeling, they're not going to mess this up. So I'm fine with the 3 at 10 p.m. and then revisiting it next year if it goes well.
Yeah, why don't we start with 3 and we can revisit it in December? And
yeah, absolutely.
if they know at that point that they have a couple of requests for spring events, we could think about, and it all went well, we could think about doing more.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that's kind of once a month through the summer, and then it would be too cold, kind of November, December.
Yeah, but then in December, they might be thinking towards, well, we want to have one in April and one in May. So then maybe we go to 5 if it all works smoothly and no complaints.
Yeah. So I'd make a motion to approve with limitation of 3 events in the year.
Can I add second for discussion? Just when they do have the new regulations with fire and everything, that those conditions are attached to these 3 events.
Per the recommendation.
That's a question. Was your motion 10 p.m. shut off?
10 p.m. shut off.
With
And I don't know if it's necessary, but I would request that the sides come down. But it sounds like they would do that anyways. So 3 events, 10 p.m.
And abutters are notified.
And abutters are notified.
And yeah, all of the conditions in the recommendation. Okay, you seconded that?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Did you want to speak for the appointment? I know you came in a little bit late.
Hi, I'm Jean Miller, hoping to be reappointed to the Scholarship Committee, and I apologize, I was tardy. I was at a different meeting. I've been on the committee for quite a while, and I enjoy it thoroughly. I've been the chair of the committee for 3 years and passed that on to Christy last year. And it's a great way for me to keep in touch with what's going on in the community. Community Foundation, we do 12 scholarships, so I'm kind of in the know of what's going on in the community with scholarships, and I sit on the Nantucket Yacht Club Scholarship Committee, so it's a good role for me, so I hope you'll let me stay on. And thanks for letting me talk
Thanks
late.
for coming. Okay, citizen departmental request. Nantucket Land Council has a conservation restriction for 22 Vesper Lane. It's pretty self-explanatory. I don't know if Emily wanted to say anything. You don't have to.
So I'll just note that per your policy, this goes to you initially. You approve it to go to town council for review. Town council will issue a report. And then once we have that report in hand, we'll bring the final product back for you for a final approval, and that gets sent off to the state.
Okay. I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
To send it to town council
Yes.
for review.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Citizen request for waiver of Chapter 200, Traffic Rules and Regulations, to allow one additional residential parking permit for a commercial vehicle at 5 Liberty Street.
Good evening, John Stover. Yes, I've put in a request for this board to approve my having 2 commercial vehicles parked on 5 Liberty Street with appropriate stickers. The bylaw actually allows me to have 3 parking stickers, 2 personally and 1 commercial. I'm not asking for any personal, I'm just asking for 2 commercial because I happen to have 2 commercial vehicles. I guess I could sell one of the vehicles to myself and then make it personal, but I'm just trying to avoid that step, frankly. That's all.
Do you have any driveway, John, behind?
I have grass.
There's not a
I have
parking
lawns
space
I can go
off of. You don't have a parking space off of Rose Lane. I just couldn't remember.
Lawn. Definitely have space where I could park a car on the lawn.
I would like to know, I don't know if Eric or Libby know, do we get requests for this often? My concern is that it is setting some sort of precedent for additional commercial vehicle spaces. I definitely understand your situation is all my vehicles are commercial, so if I lived where you would, I would need something similar. But I do think in town, there are some issues with setting precedents in additional commercial vehicles.
We haven't gotten any specific ones that have come to the level of our office. I think the police department may have had a couple, and they've dealt with them just through their normal process and letting them know that there's only one available for a commercial vehicle. But there are numerous people that this could potentially impact. If you let this one go, more people might come forward.
What if I'm trying to look at this? John, you're saying you're allowed 3 vehicles now, but you're going to have 2. They're just going to be 2 commercial vehicles.
That's right.
So if we said that you'll have 2 commercial, you won't apply for a residential, then we're 1 down.
That's exactly right.
And you're willing to do that?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm looking at it from that perspective.
John, you're going to need to come up to the mic to answer that so it gets on the tape.
What was your question again, please?
Well, I'm saying you've got the right to have 3 vehicles parked there. One could be commercial.
Bylaw.
Yeah,
Yes.
And so, but you're willing to have 2 commercial and no other vehicles.
Correct.
Okay. So I think if we're doing that, I'm sort of horse trading away one of the vehicles to give them another commercial and not set the precedent that we're adding additional commercial. Now, I don't know if anyone has an issue with that, but.
This isn't the first time we've done this either.
No, I understand.
Okay.
And this isn't a commercial parking sticker.
Right.
It's still a residential parking sticker, but it's for a commercially registered vehicle.
Yes. But it's one that's a person that's year round that's identified that we know. It's not it's not someone that's parking a car and leaving it there. Like the trouble we had a few years ago was a lot of trucks figured out they could get these stickers and park downtown in the 2-hour zones and leave for a week or leave for 2 weeks, and they were parking in front of the Nantucket Hotel and different areas and leaving the cars. And so this is why we started tightening on the commercial stickers. It's why we started tightening up on residential, because there was a lot of sort of things going on. So
It was that, but it was also people who were parking multiple vehicles for the same address and getting many permits for the same address.
Right.
Not just commercial.
Right.
So the proposal is to limit this address to 2 stickers in total.
2 commercial is what I would
But
say.
they can both be commercially registered cars.
That's what I'm suggesting, if there's a way to do that.
Is that trackable at police?
I mean, for one place, maybe. But where does it end and when does it end? Because what happens is I get a seasonal employee that sits in there on the weekends, and you know, the Stover House has had 4 or 5 permits in the past because they've had family members come that move in during the summer and et cetera, et cetera. So I can't say for sure how we would indicate to the staff other than sending them an email that my full-time people can remember the Stovers only get no more permits. But anybody else, how do we know? And the other thing is, I know at least one individual who we turned down this year and every year that's got 4 or 5 commercial HVAC trucks that he kept at his house until this rule was passed, and I'm guessing he'll be here next week because we turned him down. So we'll have to figure out how we're going to do this. The rules are what they are. If you want to change the rules, change the rules. It's all right with us, but I don't know how we will track that unless we change some regulations.
So, sorry, Chief, just, there's no way to sort of flag a property saying that it only has 2 permits available?
Not easily.
Okay.
Yeah.
I tend to agree with Chief. If we need to change it or amend the rules or regulations, let's do that versus making an exception. I'm sentimental to Mr. Stover's situation because I have 2 commercial and 1 residential, and just what you said, Rita, it'd be the same for me. But we're going to get more of these and more of these, so let's just look at the regulations and change them if we need to.
Again, John Stover, I don't know if you want the benefit of this thought, but I could certainly create a lot of parking spaces on Liberty Street by simply using different names. I'm not doing that. I'm trying to be straightforward here. I get 3 parking places, 2 of them that are my own personal name, not any of my children, just me, and 1 commercial. That's 3 parking spaces or tickets that I could get, period, just by the way the law is written. If I want more, all I need to do is have a different corporation, and I get another car. I have a different person who owns a vehicle living at the house, and we get more cars. We're not doing that. We're keeping it down. I have another commercial vehicle. I'm not even parking here. Limiting it to 2. And I could get 3 without doing very much of anything, except I'd have to sell one of my commercial vehicles to me.
Give yourself a good price, I hope. I hope you give yourself. They still tax you anyway.
So, Matt, do you still think it's...
I can go either way. I mean, I think, I trust that if he says he'll have 2 cars, he'll have 2 cars. And if he doesn't, we deal with it. But I also understand the chief's concerns.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not worried, and I'm not really worried about the precedent with someone coming in and asking for 5, because we're going to tell them we're trading 2 for 3. So I'm not thinking that that's a real precedent. And the problem with this is that we've got a limited resource that we haven't valued for many years. And a lot of the downtown parking is pushed into these residential sections because and for all different reasons. And those, these issues have grown, over my lifetime. The cars are parking now all the way up to Lincoln Circle, all the way up to Sunset Hill. I mean, when we hit the summer, they're everywhere. So, and they're not there at night. They're not packed in there. They're not all living downtown. These are all cars from people who come in and spend a long time downtown during the day. And you can drive through at 3, 4, 5 in the morning and the downtown is empty, and you drive through a few hours later and it's full. So the vehicles that are down there are long-term parking all day long. They know what the police's schedule and when they enforce better than the police do, and they know how to finagle the system to park all day. And that's what we're dealing with. So, this is just, we're getting pushed out from the residences, and we're getting pushed out. The businesses are being hurt. The residential areas are being hurt. The whole thing needs to be valued properly and dealt with properly, which I hope we'll get to.
To Matt's point, if you're going to have some sort of a committee or a group of people who are going to work on this, I would like to be a part of that.
Christy?
Yeah, I was just going to say, my thoughts were kind of, I came in here not really wanting to set the precedent that we would increase the number of commercial vehicle permits, but knowing that you can have 3 and you're only asking for 2, we're just kind of changing that restriction. I do wish there was a way that the police could track that a little better, and I'm wondering if there's a better system we could be using, because it seems that that's something we should be able to do and not have such a staff resource doing it. I think that we should relook at what the regulations are, like Jason was saying, but I would be willing to make this exception where, you know, he's allowed 3 permits, and being able to divide it between residential or commercial could be at his discretion.
I have to correct one thing. He's not restricted to 3 permits. He can have, I think, up to 5. He just has to pay more for them. So it's not 3. You just get 2 at the regular price, and then the commercial's the extra thing. So at the 3rd one and the 4th one and the 5th one, you pay up a graduated fee up to. And some of these houses downtown have 10 or 15, you know, however many weeks in the summer, a new permit issued every week because they get a new
For the
renter
rentals.
and stuff. So it's really a Pandora's box. We had this hearing and set this regulation back a few years ago because the issue comes down to it requires somebody to have a vehicle registered to them to qualify for a residential permit in the downtown area. And commercial vehicles are not registered to the person in many cases. It may be registered to ABC Pharmaceuticals. And they just say, well, that's my car. Well, we don't know that. We have no way of proving that. And the person at the window, it's kind of like, you might as well just give anybody that walks in and applies for a permit if we're going to make it that way. That's why the board at the time set the restriction to 1, because it limited the amount of effort we had to put into trying to sort this out with these residential parking permits. If they were registered to, you know, John Stover Incorporated, it's a little easier maybe to establish that it's actually his. But most commercial vehicles are not registered to John Stover Incorporated. They're registered to ABC Real Estate or something like that. And, you know, next thing you know, you got 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, and you can't keep track of it.
Yeah, the problem is it's the same thing as what Rita and Jason said. I mean, in my household, we're in the same boat. My car is registered to me personally, but all my husband's vehicles are registered to Holgate's Island Laundry, Inc. So it's there's a lot of year-round Nantucket people who have their cars registered to their year-round Nantucket businesses, and there are a handful of people who still live in town. So I'm a little bit torn on this, especially in the situation where John's saying he's willing to give up his rights to have additional permits to just have these 2 cars that I don't even think are, like, I don't even think you have Stover Engineering on the cars. They're more your personal use vehicle. They're more regular vehicles. It's not a big work truck that has your business down the side of it.
That's correct. With the exception of what used to be Catherine's cars, there's no indication that there's a commercial entity with that vehicle.
And sorry, just to clarify, so you currently have 1 commercial vehicle permit, and you currently have 1 commercial vehicle permit?
Yes.
And then do you have any residential?
No.
No. So of
it is residential parking.
Yeah.
Per se, but there's only 1 commercial sticker that I have, and I don't have any personals.
So of the 5 that you could have, you're only using 1?
Right.
Okay. And you're willing, I'm just trying to add up the math there. So you're willing for the second commercial, you're essentially giving up the other permits?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
It's the monitoring that I'm worried. I mean, it's logical, but it's whether we can keep track of it and not open a door for
So the only way I can get one
major
of these tickets
problems.
is to actually come into this building and go and see Catherine and ask her to give me a permit when I fill out the application. That's the only way I can do that. So it gets monitored. The chief does that already.
So we're going to that new Energov. Will that have a better monitoring system or no? No? Okay.
No.
Not anytime soon, or not at all. All right, I'll just make a motion just to see where we're at so we can move on. I'm sorry, John, I love you, but I'm gonna take the staff recommendation to not grant this exception due to, well, I'll just leave it there.
Is there a second?
Okay, so I'd like to hear a positive motion then.
I would make a positive motion in this case to allow for 2 commercial vehicles, but that being the limit to the number of resident or parking permits allowed for that address, knowing that this is potentially going to trigger us having to review these regulations. I think in this scenario, and I'd like to, I struggled with some of the changes previously, again, commiserating with people who have commercial, trying to be supportive of the working men and women that those are their only vehicles. I think it's difficult. I'd really like us to find a way to understand who owns the vehicles. I know we can do company searches really easily, maybe not easily under the current system, but if this becomes an issue, I'd like us to find a way to figure that out.
I'll second your motion.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
And then these are reviewed each year, so if we find out that other permits were pulled, we could then take the second residential or commercial permit away? Is that?
Yes.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, as long as we can track it.
Yeah, that's our intent.
My only issue with this is, if we're gonna, let's change regulations and look at the policy and change it versus doing one-offs. Like, it's gonna, and next year we have to come and do this again when we should be talking about bigger policy regulation issues. If this spurs that, then we should look at it and then change it, but not a one-off. This is my take on it.
Understood.
Well, I guess we'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 4-1. But I think we will have to revisit these regulations now sometime this summer. Come up with something.
Okay, before we do that, we should get you the minutes from the prior several times when we've had almost this exact same discussion. Because
I know. I know it's an ongoing thing, but there's got to be some way to solve this.
Well, I think we're going to solve it when we have the committee together and we put in demand management and a parking program. We aren't going to solve it, with our current timed parking, the way we handle it. Copying that with the increased demand we have isn't going to solve it. We're going to have to do enforcement and paid parking and other things in a lot different manner if we want to do this. And we're not a small town with 10,000 cars anymore. We're an urban environment with 25,000 in growing number of vehicles peak summer, and we're going to have to handle it differently. And that's what we're going to solve. And I think trying to Band-Aid some of these regulations is sort of a waste of time. I think we need to get to what we've been talking about for a couple of years.
I don't think that this particular issue is overly complicated in the fact that if someone only has vehicles registered to their year-round commercial business, or not even necessarily year-round, but their Nantucket-based commercial entity, those are their only vehicles and they're not going to go for any other permits. I would think that that's a valid exception to the rule and could somehow be written in.
And I agree with that. And but I think, knowing people living on Liberty Street and other places, even up by the Academy Hill, if they leave from their house, they can't get back into it until midnight or 1 in the morning. The spaces fill up and the cars never leave from in front of their house. So our residential neighborhoods don't favor the residences when we get to certain times of year. And they kind of should. And so how do we balance, giving them some benefit and getting the traffic, the cars to move in the downtown? That's going to be done through a demand management program and looking at each street individually and charging people appropriately. So, and I think the sooner we get there, the sooner some of these things can be tweaked by that committee and on a yearly basis, and not have to deal with it here. It's painful. anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Obviously, a lot of time on this issue, too. Thanks.
Next up is Nantucket Island School of Design and the Arts, a request for a waiver of some fees. These are in relation to the demolition of the cottages at Francis on Washington Street.
Madam Chair, I'm going to apologize because I failed to notify Kathy that this was on the agenda.
Oh, she reached out to me. She's away. She went to see her grandchildren, but I've talked to her about it pretty extensively. And she had initially made a request that was a little bit more involved and has come back with this, which is very much a direct relation to the cost of demolishing the cottages. I'll just say my personal feeling is that in a lot of real estate transactions, if we had purchased the land, the burden would have been on us to do the demolition. She's handled all of it, and she's just asking for the fees to be waived. And I mean, I think that we also, this was a lengthy process. It was very tied up in land court for a long time. This is a great project, a fabulous example of how we worked together with a nonprofit, with the land bank and the town, and pieced all of this project together, which will come to fruition hopefully in the fall in terms of it being really complete.
I would agree. I think in this scenario, we would be demoing these ourselves anyways. So I think that the money would be spent anyways. So I am in favor of this.
Any other comments or questions?
I mean, I'm just never really in favor of waiving the fees and then having the cost be put on the town, but I do understand that we did save money, and I guess my question is it kind of equally balanced out? Did we save more than we're going to be kind of absorbing?
And in this scenario, the town would bear the cost either way, correct? If we had to do it post-purchase?
True.
And the staff time to do all the permitting.
Yeah, I think it's pretty even.
I move approval of the staff recommendation to accept it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I know that they'll be very appreciative. Public Works Department request for noise bylaw waiver in connection with night work for annual roadway painting. Does this also include some sewer project roads?
It may. It's not scheduled right at the moment, but at some point when those roads are ready to get striped, it'll just be pretty much line painting on town roads at night.
Yes. Excuse me, Rob McNeil, DPW. So the night painting is something that's gone on for some time, but that's by vendor coming on island for a limited engagement to do all the long lines townwide. The intersection painting, the crosswalks and stop bars, that being done at night is something that started last year and came from my first year here and feedback from folks who suffered through the temporary traffic that each of these major intersections that are striped annually had to deal with during sort of the peak of the prep for summer. And so it went off with certainly, I won't say without a hitch, there's certainly always some level of disruption and impact. I'd like to think that the impacts that occur to these folks that suffer through night work is certainly significantly less than the collective town-wide impacts of all the traffic that has to suffer through those daytime activities. So with that, and recognizing that we will have certainly still some cause for concern, and we'll take those particular intersections under advisement, whether it's the lighting or certainly trying to limit the amount of use of the backpack blowers to prep the pavement for treatment. We're trying to minimize impact during the day.
I would make a motion to approve, to allow the waiver to the noise bylaw.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Select boards reports and comments. Clarification as to May 8th, 2019 issuance of dangerous dogs.
Are we skipping Libby?
Wait.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just
No respect,
jumped
you know?
right over you.
Thank you, Matt. Matt's
Way
interested.
ahead.
So I was actually getting a little relieved there.
I was too. I'm like,
Trying to speed things
I
up.
was like, are we already done?
Okay, first item is review of beach safety, and we've got a couple of things under here. Harbor Master is going to give a preview of our beach preparations for the upcoming season. We have been doing this, I think, with the board the last couple of years, just to let you know what we're doing to get ready for the summer. There's a lot that goes into doing that, some beach safety issues, and we've been discussing quite a bit lately shark sighting protocol and dealing with sharks, and we do have another presentation following this about a summer shark research program with OSearch. But in the meantime, Harbor Master is in charge of beach maintenance, and a lot of other departments contribute to that, but we wanted to just give you an overview of what we're doing to get ready and what some of the safety issues are.
Okay, so in April, we had a meeting with all the stakeholders, which is DPW, Natural Resources, the Land Bank, ourselves, and Town Administration. We work closely with the Land Bank, especially for the cleanup. We divide the beaches up evenly to make sure that they're cleaned every day by our personnel and by Land Bank personnel. We're actively preparing and outfitting the beaches as we speak. All the major projects have been completed. We need to get the ramps out. We need to still get lifeguard stands out. Dionis Beach has the ramp and everything has been installed. The lifeguard stand is there, and the box and stuff. So we're working on that. We're hoping to have that done by the end of the week. We do have 2 people per day, starting at 7 a.m. that start cleaning the beaches where we're responsible for, and then we split that with the Land Bank. And there's a map I gave you guys to show you how we divide up the cleaning. Those are the sections and who does what and who cleans where. The beach hotline is active, and starting Monday, the phones will be manned until 4, and then after that, they'll be manned until 7 p.m. At Tom Nevers, we removed all the debris that we can. The DPW had a company come in to do a geophysical report thing, and now we're waiting for a quote from contractors to see what it's going to cost to get the larger debris out of there.
May I interject just one second? It was a ground penetrating radar survey, and it is probably quite extensive what the items are that are under the ground there, and it is going to take a lot to figure it out. So we're sort of trying to grapple with that right now and determine what permitting there might be, what sort of stabilization structures or equipment might be needed to get at that material, and maybe the Parks Master Plan might hopefully get at that. But it's a point that Sheila's raising about it, because we've had a lot of inquiries about it, and we were trying to get the ground penetrating radar survey underway, but it's just not easy.
I haven't been out there in a couple months. Will it have to be blocked off, or is it safe now, that area where all the debris is coming through?
The problem is it's all right at the water's edge.
Oh, okay.
And so it's very difficult for machines to get down there to get the stuff out. So we carried what we could.
Mm-hmm.
We were down there for a couple of weeks, picking up the debris and carrying it up the bank. But we've done everything that we can pick up and clean up to make it safe. But we'll be putting out notice to mariners to say for like surfers and stuff to stay away from there. It's not a guarded beach. I don't think there's a whole lot of swimming that goes on there, but I'm more concerned about maybe surfers ending up on something that's covered by water at high tide or something like that. And that's what I have for beaches. So we'll move into sharks. We have updated our policy to make sure that we're in compliance with the USLA and that we're parallel with the Cape Towns in what they're doing. We met with OSearch today. They're going to be doing some research out here this August. So we talked to them and to see how we could help them with logistics. So we have a current shark sighting and shark attack policy. We train the lifeguards and the CSOs in shark identification and shark sightings and what to do when they have one. We're going to have Stop the Bleed training this year during Beach Week. We have a flag system and are awaiting signs from the White Shark Conservancy group. We have the 5 main safety steps that the Cape has brought to light. We do have flags. We have a flag system. And again, we're waiting for the signs from them. We have advanced first aid kits. We have EMTs and emergency medical responders on the beaches. We will have Stop the Bleed training. We do not have wired phones on our beaches, but we have radios. And the beaches that are where our lifeguards are, we do have successful cell phone coverage. We've closed the beach 3 times since 2016 for shark sightings, what we believe to be were confirmed shark sightings. One was for a sunfish in 2016. Last year we closed the beach once because injured seal washed up on the beach, and it looked like it had an encounter with a shark. So we closed the beach for safety for that, and then another time we had a confirmed sighting. Scott Leonard reported that we've had 2 confirmed shark-seal interactions in May, one at Cisco and one at Surfside. We use social media and local media, 97.7 and whatever we can to help educate the public about both seals, marine mammals, and sharks. We do safety tips and specifically mention sharks and seals in them and safe ways to enter the water, when you should and shouldn't go out on the water. We post them continuously on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And then the town and the police and everybody retweets all that stuff. So we're using everything we can. The lifeguards, obviously, last summer after the incident up in Truro, they got a ton of questions from the public, and we've prepared them on how to answer those questions and what we should do. We can't predict what a shark is going to do or where they're going to be or what's going to happen, but we do the best we can to be as ready to respond if something was to happen.
Have you guys always done the Stop the Bleed training, or is that new?
Stop the Bleed is new this year.
That's great.
We've always done the shark identification and sighting and stuff like that, but Stop the Bleed is new this year. We also have tourniquets added to all of our first aid kits, our advanced first aid kits. We have several more of them added to them. So all of our, and one will be traveling with the ATVs, and we'll be traveling with the lifeguard supervisor truck for the unguarded beaches, in case they need to respond to an incident there.
That's great. You're doing the Stop the Bleed training. I think everybody here should, if you live here year round, should. I think the fire department's done. That offers that for free. I think. No.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, the police department. Okay. Thanks.
Sheila, do we know how we compare to some towns on the Cape in terms of confirmed sightings?
I don't.
Don't know.
I don't know that.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't know if you would, but just wondering how we compare.
Was there anything, you went off on the Cape, I think you and some of the police department went out to a shark meeting in the Cape. Was there anything
What
interesting?
that mostly was about is how to inform the public of what the town is doing to be ready. It was more like a Chamber of Commerce thing than really for what to do if there is an incident. It's more for how to educate people
Mhm.
what we're doing to tell the public and stuff.
Is anybody doing drones or any new technology?
Some of the Cape Towns I know are doing drones.
Yeah. That's all.
Yeah, back to the lifeguards real quick. How are we doing hiring? Do we have coverage at our beaches through Labor Day this year?
Yes,
We do?
we
Okay.
always do, and then
Okay.
we end up keeping a couple of rovers on until Columbus Day.
All right, great.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, not all the beaches are open
Right.
through Labor Day, but Children's Beach, a North Shore Beach, usually jetties, and Surfside.
Right. That's a buddy of mine complains every year. How come there are no lifeguards? You know.
No, unfortunately, they're college age and they're
Right.
going back to school earlier and earlier.
I know. I'll talk to you offline. I can't run my sandwich shop without employees, so I'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sheila.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. I just want to mention that the Cape Cod Managers Association has had some discussion about this, and the hope is that at some point there will be a consistent effort among the Cape and Islands towns to have consistent messaging, signage, perhaps sharing of equipment, information, things of that nature. It's a bit difficult right now because some towns are sort of territorial about their branding, and they like to kind of do their own messaging. So it's a bit like, somebody's got to kind of take the thing take charge of it, and either everybody wants to do that or nobody wants to do that. So it's a bit challenging to get in on a consistent program. So we're just doing what we think is best for getting information out to the public and letting them know what we're doing. So that's what this was about, and I've got a little bit of information in the town manager e-newsletter, which is coming out, I think, tomorrow, about beaches and sharks and stuff. So hopefully that'll get information out as well. So I think that Mr. Bridges arranged for OSearch to be here, and I'm not really sure who that is, but I think we have a bit of a PowerPoint from them.
It was a big file,
Yeah,
pretty pictures.
sorry. I can go ahead and start while that loads a little bit, if that's okay with you all. First, my name is Chris Fisher. I've been with OSearch since it began. I'd like to thank you all for your time here tonight. The main reason we're here in advance is for multiple reasons. Number one, we're in the midst of solving the life history puzzle of the Northwest Atlantic white shark. We began in 2012 trying to understand where and when they're mating, where and when they give birth, where the nursery is, where they gestate in their full migratory range. The scientists want 60 white sharks for that project. So far, we've tagged 43 in the Northwest Atlantic. Our first 2 white sharks have arrived in Nantucket. They arrived just last night, one about 10:15 p.m., and then one about 5 days previous to that. So the sharks are starting to arrive in Nantucket now. We tracked those sharks up from Florida over the last 10 days or so. While we're in the midst of this larger North Atlantic project, we approached some of the people in the community of Nantucket because we've done some work around the world that can be very community specific. And we engaged with Sheila, who's been great to us over the years. We've engaged with the Nantucket Data Group, trying to work with them in understanding the movements of our sharks and the movements of your all's response vehicles so they can know where sharks are more likely to be and they can plan those routes. We're working with them on taking antibiotics from the mouth of the sharks so that if you do have a shark incident, you have the right we're taking the bacteria off the mouth of the sharks So if there is an incident, we test it against the local bacterias and the local antibiotics so that you have the right antibiotics on hand in your hospital to fight the specific bacteria that the white sharks off your beaches have in their mouths. So one of the things we're trying to do, we've engaged with Pete Kaiser and the fishing group to try to engage them to understand how the fishing fleet is moving around. Are the white sharks moving on all the life that the fishing fleet is on? Typically they're on the life, so we're trying to correlate those data sets. And so the main thing is to give you an understanding of our overall white shark North Atlantic project, and then really try to understand the needs of the community to see what we can do while we're working to make it more Nantucket specific to meet your public safety needs and your management needs. And so that's why we're here, to engage and understand how we can, what things can we do additionally to address the specific community's needs, because we're already there handling sharks 3 to 6 miles offshore. And for us to add additional layers of science really costs no more money. We have also here our chief veterinarian, Dr. Elisa Newton from the Wildlife Conservation Society and the New York Aquarium. We're also working with your state representatives in DC, and we have Jen and Cece here from the Atlantic Strategies Group down in DC that's communicating with your state representatives down there to try to build a comprehensive program to address the needs of the entire Eastern Seaboard, and then drill down into a pilot program for Nantucket that, if we complete it right and are successful here, could be a pilot program for other communities around the world who have sharks off their beaches to leverage as well. So we can just go through these slides real quick, because probably many people don't understand. The vessel was in the previous image, and it's the lift on the bottom that allows us. We have 37 scientists from 20 different research institutions on this project, ranging from Woods Hole to the University of Florida, Auburn, University of South Carolina, and University of Massachusetts right there. So there's 37 scientists from 20 institutions, all with different disciplines, looking at every shark because of that lift that's in the bottom. And that lift is what's allowed us to give these scientists safe access. When you go to the next slide, I think we can skip this slide. This is about the Pacific. When we started in 2012, there was really no tracking data of white sharks in the Northwest Atlantic. This is the data set of sharks we have been tracking since 2012. This is 43 white sharks, about 10 mature animals, 20 young of the year, and another 13 or so subadult sharks. You can see that the sharks, this is pretty much the first view that anyone has had of the full range of your white shark here in Nantucket. They're arriving now, but they will depart here starting in October, November, and then they're in all of these other areas around the Northwest Atlantic as well as the Gulf. As you can see, they're very coastal. We've all been swimming with white sharks our whole lives on the East Coast. Nothing's changed. We just know now. I know the people up here knew it, but I don't think the people in the southeastern United States and the mid-Atlantic regions and Florida regions knew how much time they were spending swimming with sharks. So an explosion of data. Anyone can track all of our sharks in real time at osearch.org, so it's free and open source to the public and available. And if you move to the next slide, this is just an example. This is a short film, so you can see all of the work that is done on each individual animal we touch. So you can just run this. This is about a 2.5-minute film. This is a shark. This is the first mature male white shark tagged in Northwest Atlantic history, and it was tagged right here off of Great Point, about 3.5 miles off the beach. Yeah, so as you can see, I'll just talk over it. You don't need to worry about the volume. It's fine. As you can see, what we do is we anchor the ship. We'll be anchoring the ship approximately 5 to 5.5 miles offshore, east of Great Point, and then working our way down around the southeast corner and then to the west. When we anchor the ship, we have 2 smaller vessels that go out and actually capture the animals. This is a crew of people. This coming August will be OSearch's 35th expedition around the world. We use this smaller vessel to get control of the sharks, and then we bring them back to the ship. And then what he's doing there is he's redirecting the line around a post so that we can swing the shark into the lift. You can see that's a male white shark there. And then we go about doing 15 to 17 research projects on each animal. So the blood sample there, we'll be able to tell you what contaminants are in the shark, which means it's what contaminants are in your seals and in your fish around here, whether that's mercury or microplastics. We also use that for reproductive hormone work and a general health assessment of the animal. There we're getting a sperm sample from a male to see if the sperm are motile, to try to identify if they are mating right here now. That is the spot tag that goes on the animal for 5 years. Every time it sticks its fin out of the water, it's tracked in real time, and that's what it's osearch.org. We also put in 10-year internal acoustic tag inside the sharks that get picked up on acoustic receivers. We will take the bacteria off their teeth and tongue so we can test that so you have the right local antibiotics at your healthcare facilities, as well as we're taking bacteria off the back of the sharks for new antibiotics for humans to fight things like staph and MRSA. So that's just a kind of a general representation of a shark that we captured right here off of Nantucket in 2016, about 4 miles off of Great Point to the east. So I just wanted to make sure everybody saw that and knew how the operation worked. So you can jump to the next slide. You might have to click it again. Yeah, so this is the movements of a mature male white sharks. This is the movements of George and Hilton, which have also shown us we did not know that Nova Scotia appears to also have a fall and winter, early winter aggregation very similar to that of Massachusetts. These two male white sharks kind of identified that along with our females being here. You can go to the next slide. I think you have the wrong presentation deck. I would skip to the next slide. This is another film, just skip it. And this is just going to show you how we're seeing the two. There's a play button on the bottom of this slide if you move your cursor. Oh, maybe not. You can skip past this. And you can just shut down this presentation. Somehow you have the wrong presentation. So we're just here to try to engage the community to try to understand how we can address specific local needs. We're making great grounds with that with the Nantucket Data Group and understanding how we can help them by identifying where your sharks are spending the most of their time so they can plan routes, plan all their safety protocols. And we just wanted to open up the discussion for this to make sure we'd really like to put together a 3-year pilot program around Nantucket, starting offshore this year, 3 to 6 miles off the beach, continuing our Northwest Atlantic work, and then working with the local community and the needs of the data group, with Sheila, with the fishing community, the surfing community, to understand and engage the data that they're seeing so we can integrate it all to give you the best look and the maximum amount of information for you to provide to the people who live here when they make their beach usage decisions, and then so that all of the safety people can be informed and have plans in place where the data suggests things may or may not occur more or less likely. And we also have, if you have any science questions here, we have Dr. Elisa Newton here from the Wildlife Conservation Society, our chief veterinarian.
Two basic questions. What are the two shark names that just rolled into Nantucket this week?
So Brunswick is on the Nantucket Shoals right now, and Cabot pinged in about 5 days ago, about 50 miles just south of Nantucket. But Brunswick pinged in last night right here off your Nantucket Shoals. But small, 10-foot subadult male white shark.
The process that you showed on the film, is that a 5-hour process? Is that 30 minutes?
So the sharks spend 15 minutes in the cradle. Wow. So if we catch a 1,000-pound shark, we'll have control of that in about 6 to 8 minutes. If it's a bigger, like a 4,000-pound shark, that takes about 40 minutes to get control of the animal. But they all only spend 15 minutes in the cradle because that's how long it takes to conduct the 15 to 17 research projects on each animal. We feel like we could keep them alive in the cradle for the better part of half a day if we needed to. But we've had no science ask for that.
I've seen in the past that some of them, they seem to go in towards Sconset area and then go back out, in and out, in and out. And they don't seem to travel further down the south coast as much. Are they hunting when they're doing that, or what are they doing?
Those are some questions that we could answer for you, with adding additional layers to the science. But yeah, the animals are foraging, right? So we believe it's likely that they're mating in this region. Because we've tracked females from here. 18 months later, they've led us to the birthing site. I mean, some of these sharks appear to be mating in Nantucket and birthing in the Hamptons.
Very
what a life, right? Yeah, so
that's a reality show.
We went to the Hamptons and we tagged 20 young of the year pups based on the tracking of our sharks that we tagged here in 12 and 13. So that was an enormous leap forward in the science.
Mm-hmm.
And the timing suggests with an 18-month gestation period, and when they made those May-June runs into the beaches of the Hamptons, that they were here in the fall a year and a half previous to that. We've never seen it happen. We've never seen females here with mating scars on them. It's just that the data and the timing seems to suggest that at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So mating, and then obviously they're here foraging, not only on dogfish and stripers and all of those things when you have big events and the life is piled up, but obviously on the seals, right? And they're coming in to take advantage of opportunities with seals. In relationship to that, it might be good to give you some context for why we do our work. These white sharks are the key to making sure there's healthy, sustainable, commercial, and recreational fisheries. They prevent the second tier of the food chain from exploding and wiping out our fish and our shellfish. Offshore here, if you lose your sharks, your squid are going to explode. They're going to wipe out your baby stripers, your baby tuna, all your baby billfish, and the things we need to grow up to eat. Inshore, they do eat some seals, but they primarily modify the behavior of the seal. They keep the seal on the beach until it's almost starving, and then it gets a little bit of food and then gets back out of the water. If the white sharks are not present, those seals will wipe out your striper, your lobster, all of your forage fish, your bait fish. We've seen that in studies that when white sharks are present around seals, the seals spend 1/4 of the time out in the water foraging than they do when the sharks are not present. So in the situation you're in, the white sharks are fundamentally important to a robust recreational and commercial fishing economy moving forward.
Are you tagging sharks other than great whites?
Up here, we will only be tagging great whites. As the ship has been around the world, this is our 35th expedition, so we do, when we're in other places, focus on tiger sharks and mako sharks and blue sharks and other things.
Okay.
Right now, we are in the middle of getting to this 60 shark sample size for the North Atlantic Collaborative Science Team, and we're at 43 now. So we are focused on completing that sample size. We've had 22 research papers published so far, and we have another 25 or so in the works, many of which are tied up in the sample size of this project now.
I have one more question. I'm just wondering, there's been so many incidents on the Cape, or so many sightings. Are you doing work there as well, or why Nantucket, not the Cape?
We're focusing on Nantucket. Our relationships have been strong here over the years. And the Cape, they have research going on over there. They don't really want anyone else working around the area while they're doing their thing. In the meantime, we have got a lot of data from over here, and there's really nothing being done to help the Nantucket people get specific data about their sharks. And while we're working on our North Atlantic, the bigger puzzle of the whole North Atlantic, and we've had success just to the east of Nantucket, we decided why not try to engage the community and build a pilot program for other communities over a 3-year period or so that we can deliver the maximum amount of information to the community to be leveraged for the various purposes we discussed earlier. And if we're successful building that package, then places like Sydney are going to need that. Perth is going to need that. Cape Town is going to need that. The Cape is probably going to ask us to come over and do that, because we come in with such a broad group of multidiscipline scientists. We don't do just one thing with one discipline. We maximize the amount of data created off every animal, thus the team of 37 scientists from 20 institutions.
Thank you.
I just want to give just a little bit of background. When Chris and his team reached out to me, I was like, is this something that, policy-wise, would select board be interested? And I said, well, come and talk to us. But the more we talked, I thought you should talk to Nantucket Data Platform and start layering all this data. Where are the most people on the beaches at time of year, and wind and temperature and all the things that I don't even know what the data, connecting them to. Right now they can't do research in state waters in Nantucket, but down the road, that's what we're hoping for, 'cause I see it as a public safety issue. Why would we not want more data for us here to make better public safety decisions? So that's why I was excited about having them come in and speak. And then you're going to be headquartering here in August and then going out, right?
That's right. We'll be back in mid-July again to engage with the community, and then we'll be back in August. And the tentative dates to operate here are August 9 to 25, offshore to the east, wrapping around to the southeast, and then ultimately to the southwest, to try to, at least in the first year, give you all a handle of the majority of the sharks seem to be off the southeast corner of the island, or off the North Great Point, or off of the southwest, and then start drilling down from there into more and more fine scale to where we can tell you in future years they appear to like to use this portion of this beach. So that's what you create data, then you chase that data and keep drilling down in that data until you get to the specifics that the Nantucket Data Group is using to integrate to your overall community project.
After that first time that we talked, when we hung up the phone, I called Pete Kaiser. I was like, is this legit? Can you help me out? So,
yeah, I was just with Pete for an hour and a half working with him to try to engage the fishing community so that they can be a part of it, so we can start aggregating their sightings, start actually maybe having them carry mobile acoustic receivers, so when they're fishing on fish, have them drop that in the water to see if white sharks are coming in where the fishermen are, because the fishermen are on the life, and the white sharks are going to be on the life too. And then you have kind of a mobile receiver that's moving with people who know where the life is, so that should be an efficient way to gather additional data.
It's really interesting.
Are you still surfing, Peter?
Well, that's really the question
That's
I
your
want
next
answered.
question? Thank you, surfboard?
We'd like to engage the surfing community as well. We're trying to put an event together at Cisco with the surfing community because they know where the sharks are.
I think it would actually be helpful to, I would love to do the sighting training, because you definitely see things and I don't know what they actually are. But.
My son just got his first surfboard, so I'm really interested in this too. Thank you so much.
I just like that we're talking about this, that we're not fearful of it, that we're prepared, and it's okay to talk about at this level, what we're doing, what would happen if, research, data.
No, thank you.
Okay, next, our licensing administrator, Amy Baxter, is going to give a review of some preliminary liquor license regulation amendments. We've talked about this, we've talked about it on and off for a while now, and what we sort of have landed on, I guess, is some areas of amendment that Amy's been looking at that we need some direction on that can then be worked into actual amendments and reviewed with stakeholders over the summer and a public hearing held in the fall, right?
Okay, sharks to liquor. So, actually, I'm going to use a little bit of what he was just talking about. We're talking about regulations here being the white shark that seems big and scary, but in essence, they help modify the behavior of the seals being in the restaurants and lead to a robust environment. So that was awesome. I love metaphors. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. We've talked about this several times over the years in the category of fees and regulations, and what we've been working on in several areas. We wanted to get to the point where we were good with our process as far as working with the restaurants when we're talking about occupancies, their uses, getting their plans together, and we feel like we're at that point that, we kind of see where this is going. We're getting them all on the same schedules. Fire's been great. We have a building commissioner now. We've kind of got all these things in a row, and we'd like to work on finally going for revisions and additions to the current regulations, liquor regulations, chapter 250. What we would like to do is, I'm just going to go over briefly what we've identified for revisions, some additions to this, and and some of the fees too. What I'm looking for really tonight, I don't want to kind of get lost in the weeds and get into details, but just identify these, find out any direction from you all, if there's anything else you'd like us to address or include in here, and some direction moving forward, and then to set a public hearing and schedule for going over final revisions and fees late summer, early September at the latest, so that we can implement them for renewal period. So to start, we've identified the areas where we're making revisions. And I want to say, as we're making revisions and additions to these regulations, we are not recreating the wheel anywhere. I'm not creating language. I've met with some other towns yesterday. I'm using what actually exists in other communities, adapting for us, but nothing here is really something that's out of the blue. It's tried and true. It's kind of what is out there. We all have, similar legal representation, so the language is not going to be something we've created. We're adapting for this, and the goal is to really kind of drill down, kind of define our processes more and help kind of regulate this. So revisions, the areas we're looking for, fee structure, which I'll get in a little bit more detail in a minute, for filing fees and structure fees increase. Further defining one-day pouring licenses. That's something obviously we paid more attention to because there's so many frequent events, there's so many unlicensed facilities, galleries, things of that sort. The pouring was so everywhere. We've seen a huge increase in that area just because of the attention paid to it. So we've created some areas where we can make that more efficient and kind of make that a better managed area as well. Further defining inspections, violations, and sanctions. Obviously, when we come into compliance time, which is coming up, and your hearings and what we would consider violations and what's before you as far as issuing sanctions and that sort of thing. Further defining that, so that's a bit of an easier process too as well, and further defined. And I'll find from what I talked to this week and others, most other towns are a lot stricter. I don't think we're on the strict end of the scale at all, but we want to further define that as well. And also as far as liquor license manager responsibilities as well. Some additions, new license fee categories. We've had some new categories come up, the general on premises, the cordials that we've had recently, just kind of adding some of those categories as well. A BYOB permit, which is done in several areas. Massachusetts law generally allows for BYOB unless there's local regulations that restrict it or put conditions on it. We see it in several areas, and we're just looking to Boston's a model and some other towns as well to put conditions on it. The permit fee would not be excessive at all, perhaps $250 or that sort, but just help regulate it and understand what those conditions are and the responsibilities for even having liquor in your establishment without a full license. We're going to define the occupancy procedure that is being worked out, and also add language and conditions in regards to the common vicular, which is going to be those that serve food, and entertainment licensing, because that's kind of lacking in that area. But those three things are required and kind of work with so many of these licenses as well. The recommendation we kind of discussed, just asking you for your consideration right now for some of these additions. Again, any questions or any sort of direction from you from there. And again, I'm going to go over the fees a little bit more as well. Sorry, let me get this back. A little bit of background in some of this as well is, since the last change, this was ratified in 2010 as far as these regulations, there have not been any updates to that in that time. And as far as fees, they have remained the same with no increase since prior to 2002, which is 17 years now. In that time, the total number of liquor licenses has increased by 14. That's as far as all year. And right now, over 251-day licenses are issued. But again, that increase has been because we have been paying more attention and kind of regulating that on a more active level. We're currently in 2010, like I said, we were 41 annual and 43 seasonal. We are now in 2019, 51 annual and 47 seasonal liquor licenses. And as far as where we rate in other towns, and we'll go over that when we certainly do these regulations, but you think of the Vineyard, they have 2 dry towns and 3 that have licenses. Edgartown has 35 total, and with the other 2, I think maybe there's 15, so they're in the 40, 50 range. We're at 97. It puts us in line with Brookline, a little under Plymouth, but Brookline, Falmouth, those types of towns is where we're at right now. So it's a lot as far as our size and location. As far as quick public outreach, as I mentioned, I've met with other towns. I'm meeting with the ABCC itself on August 1st, and we're there for the hearing. Also tomorrow, we have our main restaurant meeting. It's going to be mostly focused on fire code and occupancies and inspections, and also some of these discussions that we're having. So that is tomorrow here at 11 a.m. that we're doing as well. So we have been in discussion with those sorts of groups as far as we're going, and we will have this all posted for folks once we have the public hearing set for people to review and to make comments on as well. So any questions as far as anything I've outlined as far as regulation updates, or any comments on anything? Yeah.
I've got a question. You have defined the off-season as January 1 to May 31st. Is that by Mass General Law, or is that our choice?
No, so I'll go into the fee proposal we can put up. So what I've done here is given some options for us to look at as far as the new fee proposal. So does it say May? That might be an error. Off-season January to March.
Well, I'm not
Okay.
I'm not into the fees. I'm into the do we have the ability to adjust the seasonal dates?
So seasonal, as far as what's defined by MGL, is either April 1st to November 30th, or then any portion thereof, or April 1st to January 15th, or any portion thereof. So it is defined in those areas, which kind of works out well for us because we're talking about those that are going to close before the holidays and stroll, and those that will stay open longer. The only consideration as far as fee rates in MGL 138 is going to be based on fee levels on 6 versus 7 day licenses. A lot of towns are restrictive as far as 6 versus, with the Sunday blue laws and all of that. So they do have that in there. And 7 day licenses cannot be more than 25% more than 6 day licenses. That is the only thing as far as restrictions in the MGL on that. Legal will, of course, have to look at this. Most towns, they have a lot of different tiers and things of that sort for closure times. That's a big deal in a lot of places. Restaurants and such will close at 10 or 11, but your nightclubs are going to stay open longer. So they have tiered fees for those that stay open, 11, midnight, 1 and 2 a.m. in those towns that allow 2 a.m. So we see that a lot. I think what may end up happening is a surcharge type of situation. In some towns they call it a surcharge, so it's not a tier. You have your base fees, and we can start looking on that. Our goal as far as fees have been, and we've discussed over the years, is one, benefiting and encouraging those that actually do stay open on an annual basis. And that's why we've started to discuss as far as defining that off-season and what consecutive closures are, and if there's a surcharge for those that are going to be closed for 30 days. I think what we need to think about, and we've talked about putting fees on those that don't or that close for long periods of time, is we have to understand how we can allow for some of that, because if we get too restrictive and force folks into a certain situation, we're going to force a lot to be seasonals. We have a very delicate balance there in January to March. So it's allowing for the fact that some are going to need to close for 30 days. The more you talk to folks, the more people are struggling in that area. So, yeah.
So I'm back. I don't think my question was answered. I'm back
Okay.
to, that's why I'm asking, what you're talking about is why I'm asking, is do we have an ability to adjust the seasonal dates? Because what happens now, hang on,
Yeah,
let me try to speak.
Okay.
What I'm trying to explain is that what happens now is the 30 days or the 60-day closure, they'll do that in January and February, but they'll close a lot of other days throughout the year, and then they scoop the big weekends. So the year-round people who are, slogging it out day to day and staying open year-round and serving the public year-round are getting ready for a big weekend, and then all their staff goes somewhere else, and they're quiet on the big weekends. So I'm asking, do we have an ability to adjust the seasonal dates to discourage that, so a seasonal really closes in the winter and doesn't just scoop the big holidays? Is that something that we could do?
No, we cannot redefine the seasonal dates.
Okay, that's
yeah. So as far as calling someone an annual or seasonal.
we have to follow the state rules.
Correct, as far as that's concerned, but I think what we're proposing and what has been done as far as time limits too is a surcharge for those that are, and we can determine if we allow for a 30-day closure and you can still be an annual, but there is a surcharge for that. And if we cut it at that, or 60 days, we can certainly do that. I think it's going to, you know what I mean? Where
So you can do it, can you do a similar thing through the classifications? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Is by classifying them differently,
Correct.
we might be able to attack.
Correct.
All right. I
So it's
got
like,
you.
correct. So it's a surcharge or a tier. They have to stay within that to be labeled that, and we want to determine what that is.
Okay.
You know, I think that's the easiest way we can do that. At this point, what we want to do is keep the fees as they are, keep them for those, that are truly annual, and we know who those are and benefit that. And right now, the difference between an annual and a seasonal is $150. You know, there is no difference at all. And from what I've talked to, a significant increase in separation between those two would be significant for those that are struggling to stay open year round. It's something we want to look at. So, yeah.
I did have a question. I think it's along the lines of what Matt is saying. I didn't quite understand with the seasonal liquor fees, where the Class A, which is the April 1st to January 15th, is a lesser fee. And then the Class B is until November 30th. It seemed like people could get the lesser fee, close in November, and then scoop up those big holidays anyways.
Well, I mean, it's going to be hard, and there's so many exceptions, and to put too many conditions on things. And I think what we're looking to do is those that do stay open to the holidays, that do stay open longer in that sense. There are so many exceptions and so many ways we can look at it and say, what if they do this? What if they do that? We are going to have some that are going to try to reroute that system. That's why I think a surcharge will help in that. But in that sense, we are looking to benefit those that will be open for those holidays, because some have started to pull out of that. And we want to encourage that. So that's just a suggestion at this point. I didn't want to try to chop it up too much. But, and again, in meeting with these other towns, there's no one else dealing with what we're dealing with at all. You know, Boston has special regulations almost at the point I feel like we need a special calendar year exception. It is just, there's no one that has even close to the number of seasonals we have. Not at all. Most of them, even on the Cape, are annual. So we're dealing with something that no one else is really dealing with, and we're trying to do something that allows for the fact that we know some are struggling for the year-round things, and understanding that, rewarding those that really are out there doing it and serving the public all year round. But if we force some to stay open, a lot of them are like, people still are people going to go? You know, they're not seeing that as much. So it's allowing for the reality of what's going on out there, but hoping to reward those, if that makes sense, without trying to chop it up too much, because there's always going to be someone that's going to go around the system. And, you know, but I think most of them, you know, want to make that effort.
Okay.
So I think what we're asking to do is we are going to continue with this outreach and meet with these groups, and kind of, I've actually met with, you know, some financial people that explain to me how many tables they need to cover a night to be open and what that margin is, because I certainly don't understand that, just to get a better grip as to what really is going out there. And what we're asking is to set a time, end of August or early September at the latest, for a public hearing and what we're going to be doing here in the outreach, so that we can kind of vote on this, and we want to be operational and move forward with things for the renewal season in October, November, when that really starts. We're also looking in 2020 to be fully moving forward with the occupancy, the definition of each use, so we kind of have that definition for each restaurant, understanding what their plans are, what their business use is, so we have that fully kind of in operation, occupancy signs, everything that we've been talking about moving forward. So in 2020, these things are being worked on. Everything we've gone through the past 3-4 years is in operation, and that's kind of what we're asking tonight. Any direction, feedback, and setting that public hearing dates.
As in when or what?
September.
As in when or what for?
For us to determine.
Determine date. We would like to kind of move forward if we asking to set that public hearing date and that schedule moving forward. If there's anything additional that we have not thought of, any direction you would like to give, that's kind of what we're looking to do, to make sure we're covering all those bases and have that.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, why don't we shoot for a date like the second meeting in September, after people have gotten through the season?
Or why don't we take a look at the calendar, because we might want to align it with the public hearings date, which might be the
The third meeting, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I would suggest some outreach to the restaurants that are affected. You know, I think that, and some of this really takes a lot of thought. I mean, which I'm sure you've done a lot already, but then, you know, then we've got sort of the outline. What I want to do is make sure we do the next step, which is outreach to those guys and really think through the various aspects of it to see how to do it before we have a public hearing and say, this is what we're doing. And then everyone goes crazy saying, well, why didn't you think of this and why didn't you think of that? I think, sort of this is step one, and I think it's a good step. And so, but I think we need a little more outreach. I don't want to be at a public hearing where we haven't really thought through the unforeseen consequences. Okay.
We have a core group of really longtime restaurateurs that I've been in touch with, and absolutely, I think we have a good line of communication. Again, we have that main meeting tomorrow, so we head into the season all knowing what everyone's thinking, what expectations are, and getting any questions out. Hopefully, we do that tomorrow. We'll meet with a lot of them. So it's been, I think, a back and forth process, and that's why I'm trying to understand kind of where they're all at in their business. So that we can allow for what's really happening and not be punitive on anything, and try to, benefit them as best as possible, and the town as well. And certain fees, obviously administration, we're charging $20 when that's basically what we're spending to send these applications out after spending hours and hours on these things. So some things need to be addressed in fees of that sort, and we're doing that based on what our actual time spent on this is, staff time, things of that sort. So it's not an arbitrary increase. It's really based on what's going on.
The only other thing, just looking at it, I didn't really see, maybe it's here and I just didn't see it, but is there a differentiation between nightclubs and restaurants? Because a lot of these places are turning into nightclubs.
Correct.
How are we going to, differentiate that? How are we going to categorize that? How are we going to charge that? Because that's the issue that we're having our biggest trouble with downtown.
Right.
It's the thump, thump, thump music, and it's, trying to do it out in the outskirts, and, larger operations. There's a lot. We've taken away the parking requirements, which used to put a little bit of a damper on some of this stuff. And now I think people are sort of looking at it as the Wild West. They can do whatever they want downtown. And the ones coming in are thinking that, and it's so expensive that economics are forcing them to do that. And so so what's the impact? What's the thought on nightclubs in that aspect?
So on that point, I absolutely agree. We split this pie into so many pieces. People are pushing the limits because they almost have to make their nut, and we do see that happening. As far as nightclub, we want to make that distinction, and we'll make that to them tomorrow as well. That the nightclub determination is based on a lot of different factors that come to fire code and building code. We have 3. We probably have 4 with Gaslight coming online. They have been in line with all the different requirements of them, sprinkler system, the double doors, the different types of things like that. As far as dealing with these restaurants turning into nightclubs, we started first in this whole process for getting with them, getting with their architects and engineers, and getting all these layouts for every use. So we define the use. We're meeting with them going, okay, great. You have a plan for emptying out your restaurant. Why? Do you have a license for a dance floor? Have a license for this type of thing? We need to deal with what these uses are for, further defining them. But I think that's what I brought up before, is that we need to define this entertainment as far as in these regulations. We don't have definitions of that at all, and that's something we want to move forward. We have districts. We have the inner core of downtown. We have the outer core. You have your mid-island. We should be setting up what those determinations are for each of those districts. So like I said earlier with keepers, they're coming into business knowing what the area is allowable. There's going to be limitations based on building and fire codes, but if we have it defined, that's kind of what we want to move towards. Because we are one-offing, and that's just the way it is. There's downtown where someone has to close their windows at 10, but across the street they have outdoor music. It doesn't marry up, and there's just so many examples of that. If we had an overarching kind of policy of areas based on that, I think that would help.
Right.
It's just, it grew so fast.
No, it has. And even I'll pick on Atlas since they're gone, but Atlas was a nightclub. They were a restaurant that was trying to make a go of it as a nightclub, and really is that what they should have been doing? And so, is that what we're trying to encourage? And and downtown, there's still a lot of these restaurants shouldn't be nightclubs. A lot of these restaurants are abutting, hotels and inns and residential areas. We have to be very careful about, saying, well, you're in the right area. If we draw the lines, we have to make sure it's,
Right. It's a difficult definition, and we've been looking at that too, based on area. And if you have an economy based on tourism and entertainment, what you have to allow for certain things. If you're living downtown, do you need to have that expectation that you're living in a tourism economy that is going to where are those limits and where's those definitions?
Well, we've always, the way we've done it in the past was through the, when they came, it's sort of, if you were right next to, if you're the Jared Coffin House right next to a commercial area, we weren't allowing it.
Right.
And I think sometimes we sort of set, rules and regulations to try to make things quote unquote simpler
Yeah.
and make them simpler so we can follow the rules, but the common sense is missing. And, and we used to have the control, somewhat more control through the, ZBA, through the regulatory process, so that places on the outskirts weren't doing these things, and places, sort of right downtown that was appropriate, were allowed. And so I think whenever we draw this line, we have to be very careful that we aren't trying to make, our, staff or our life easier, but we're actually causing a bigger problem to begin with.
Right.
So it's a warning, because I've been in the industry and been through it long enough,
Right.
and I've seen what's happening, and people are really pushing it in some regards.
Absolutely, and we've kind of created that condition. There's so many competition out there that's how they're pushing their limits.
Yeah, we want businesses to be successful, but it's got to be fair, and it's got to.
Correct.
There's got to be services provided for.
Correct.
The community. I think we really do have to handle this difference between the seasonal Class A and the seasonal Class B.
Sure.
Because, and Rita was starting to ask about this, it's kind of, why wouldn't someone just pay for the longer time period and close?
Right.
For a month.
I think we would need to put some provision in similar to like the closing for more than 30 days in the
Consecutive
off
day
season,
closures.
like closing for more than 7 days in December.
Right.
You can't get that cheaper rate.
Correct. And what we see in a lot of areas that, Orleans and some others too, and they're defining being open sometimes the Thursday to Sunday thing in certain off seasons is more reasonable. They're not saying being open 7 days a week,
Right.
but they define it a little bit of that sense. So I think we can go in that direction as far as what is a true seasonal, who is actually open. Would be required in that shoulder season, a Thursday to Sunday type of, or Monday type of
Yeah,
situation.
you'd want people open on the weekends through the holidays
Correct.
if they're going to pay the cheaper rate to the January 15th.
Correct.
If we're going to do that tier, which makes some sense.
Yeah, that makes sense because they do have some sort of shoulder season, and it's not too hard on them to be open. You're not asking 7 days a week. Seasonals, in most places, it's hard to really, it's not the same as annual. If you're closed for 3 consecutive days or more, you're reporting to the town and asking for, and other towns do the same thing that we do in that sense too. So seasonal does tend to be looser as far as those requirements.
Is there a plan for if someone is in a certain category, a lesser category, where they're not allowed to close for less than 30 days, and then they end up closing for 45 or 50 or whatever it is it sort of, you get one exception if it's 2 years in a row, or is it a retroactive increase in the fee?
As far as what we're doing now or what we're
Proposing.
What we're proposing. I think, again, why I keep using the word surcharge, and I found that some other towns doing this yesterday, and as far as the best way to handle it. Exceptions are hard. Certainly there's going to be situations, we have that now, where that happens, and we kind of review that. So when something needs to close for a certain reason, there's a fire, there's something they need to kind of take care of, that's certainly something to consider. And I think you have that prerogative to consider it, like in most cases, because there's going to be those times that happens. But, we do see a pattern in that sort of thing. You let it go once and it keeps continuing. So it's trying to be consistent across the board with how we apply these. And they always, no matter what we do, had the option to appeal and to kind of work that situation.
I think when looking at the bigger picture, trying not to incentivize people to stay open year round, and flipping it, and this is what I've heard tonight, to give a break to people who do stay open year round. I know people are going to close because they can't make it, in the off season, but thinking to give good breaks to people who do stay open year round. It's almost one and the same, but just kind of focusing on that way. And I also like to say, this is the third year on the board, and we've always said we were going to do this every year. We're actually doing it now, so thank you to Amy, town admin, Chief Pittman.
Yeah, well, it's been a long process, and I think the fire department's been great too as far as working on some of these other issues. So we've gotten a couple ducks in the row that we've wanted to do, so we didn't piecemeal this. we feel in a better position that we have some of the answers to some of these questions, and we're working with all the restaurants a lot better in communication and understanding what their actual business plans are. And we get all their plans together, then we're kind of working a little bit better. We're not just getting hit with things. We plan it out with them, and they seem to understand kind of where they need to go. So hopefully that's kind of why we're at this point.
But I don't think the incentive is going to be a difference of $500 or $1,000. The incentive really is the dates, and the in a way, and the incentives is, having to ask to close and how long you're allowed to close. Those are the real incentives. $1,000 here or there for these guys, if they scoop, if they close for 2 or 3 weeks and then scoop Stroll and then scoop New Year's and then close again and then get open for Daffodil and then close again. They're making an economic decision, but they're not really serving the public on the other weekends that we really need them. So the question is, the incentive really for the year-round is to make sure when we hit those busy weekends, the actual year-round restaurants benefit. Mm-hmm. And so that's and I don't have the answer. There's a lot more to thought that I think I would have to put in this. I haven't quite figured it out, but I kind of identify what I see as sort of the complaint the restaurants have and the deal and the issues that they're dealing with. But now now is how do you model it so that you get a little better service to the year-round community.
Right.
So.
And this is one area in this where we are kind of recreating the wheel. We're creating a model that really doesn't exist too much in this state, at least. So that's the challenge, and to do it fairly. So we're trying to at least talk to all of them and talk from different perspectives and understand the reality of the business out there. But we did, like I said, split this pie in a lot of pieces. So that's what's creating some of these conditions. So hopefully, if we're all kind of on the even playing field, then marketplace kind of takes care of the rest.
I just have one question. So you mentioned that we have the most kind of liquor license compared to other cities. So on par with Brookline.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion to limit the number of liquor licenses?
Well, we've talked to legal about that, and we had some kind of decision on that, and it's a difficult thing. They're saying we need to, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm doing this off of memory of an email we got from legal as far as determining a number. You'd have to kind of pick a number. We'd have to go through a process, and that's difficult to do. They say that you can still, even add a quota, someone can still appeal a denial. So you're still determining public need, which you're doing anyway with each license application. So it wasn't something that seemed easy to do, or that we're necessarily at a point that would make sense, that you're still already making that decision with each license application as far as public need at that time and those considerations that we do with the license. So from my understanding of what legal told us, we're gonna pick a number, 97. Okay, we're good. How does that, kind of work? So we might need to define it differently and not just pick some number arbitrarily. That could still get appealed. So I don't know that would make the situation better, but it might be a bigger discussion as far as how we're planning this and making decisions.
Yeah, I was just wondering if that was part of the discussion with the fees.
Absolutely, and I can share that with you too as well, because I'm not saying as eloquently as the attorney did, but it just didn't seem like something that we could just, let's pick a number that made sense right now.
Okay, so we'll do a public hearing in September.
Yeah. And then we will publish that information prior to that, obviously.
Yeah, so do you have the direction you need from the board to develop proposed amendments?
I believe so.
So the next steps would be to meet with stakeholders, review the concepts, I guess, and then maybe I'm just talking out loud here, but maybe there needs to be one more review with the board to make sure you're on the right track before we actually have the public hearing. To make, we don't want to go through the effort of developing a bunch of amendments and then say, oh, we don't want any of that.
I think it's a good
Correct.
idea.
Mm-hmm. I think the next review I'd like to have after we have some legal eyes look at some of this.
Yeah, we just got to keep it on track because as you point out, if we want to get these fees in place for 2020, they need to be adopted no later than November.
Correct.
And I really think defining nightclubs, because some of these restaurants truly are nightclubs, we should define that and charge for that.
Right.
And I don't know, I just think that should be one of the categories. Right. If we're doing the we're seeing who's moving the tables and what, how intense they're using it until closing hours at night, and let's make sure that that's reflected that way.
I'll check into that. Off the top of my head, I think the two ways that some towns do it are the surcharge based on closing times, because obviously after 10 p.m. you know what they're doing. In most towns I'm seeing are putting in, when we're talking about common viculars, having food available for folks at all times that they are serving liquor, which they really are supposed to be if they're a common vicular. We're not talking a full menu, fries, whatever it is to have something available. So if you're shutting the kitchen off at 10, you're up until 1. And a good number of the towns say they do have that kind of caveat that something should be available. If you're a common vicular, that's your license. You're a common vicular with liquor.
Right, but
You're not
yeah,
but that's another step.
and then they get around it by sticking potato chips behind the bar. So I mean, it's sort
There's
of
always ways.
Yeah, but the way you are, what you are. I mean, a duck
Right.
is a duck. If we're gonna, I just think that we have to figure out how to handle that in a way that's fair. Because what's not fair now is the restaurants that are, going to 10
Right.
and not, disrupting the neighborhood and not doing that. Paying the same amount as someone that's running a restaurant and then a nightclub all night. So I just think there's two things going on
Okay.
that we need to figure out how to separate
We can address that.
and deal with them, yeah. So,
Yeah.
anyway.
Yep, absolutely. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
Good evening, Rob McNeil, DPW again. Here to talk a little bit about the sidewalk work group and some of the things we've been talking about. Coming back with a proposal for a process for sidewalk project. I'd like to invite all the people that have been part of the work group that are here present to join me at a mic to certainly join with questions or answering questions or give their perspective of their experience so far with the work group. And I thank all of them so far for their participation and efforts. And it's with their participation and efforts and the people that have provided feedback through the process that we've come to these conclusions and recommendations for the board to consider. So essentially we start with, and this is quite a general process. We can break down, depending on each project, any one of these red categories into quite complex to quite simple possibilities for each category. So we start with a review of the project goals. We go through existing conditions determination, which, as an example, could vary from the highest intense, most historically significant, and would maybe require something as extensive as a electronic scanning, which is locationally recordable, so that the surface could be exactly repeated, down to something that's, quite frankly, on the back of a napkin to record, what's there, if it's not significant or non-existent with regard to historical sensitivity. To identifying conflicts, what exists out there today that may or may not be in conflict with the project goals. Start to identify that early. And then come forward with what we do on pretty much every project, layout and concept. And so bringing that forward at that step for review. Review can take on many forms, starting with the work group itself, this board, and other boards that may have something to say. And frankly, the public information sessions have been extremely valuable in this regard. Moving on to taking feedback from the review period on top of the concept and coming forward with a design development process, which would essentially lay out visualizations and potentially provide some samples of maybe materials to be used. The dimensionally appropriate visualization efforts would be something similar to what we're seeing already for the roundabout projects, where folks have been able to kind of lay out over aerial photography, or that's something similar to that, to provide folks an understanding of really what is being envisioned. That will help the next period of review to make sure that the people that have provided feedback can see that their wants, needs have been addressed before we start moving forward with the final design and permitting. And again, each one of these steps will be different for each project depending on what is needed for those particular corridors. Final design and permitting would move on through another review process prior to stepping into construction and jumping around the circle altogether. Once construction is completed, we would cap that with a final review, which would ensure that the goals of the project that were set at the outset were actually met. Give us some time to reflect on lessons learned, things that we want to see done differently next time, things that may need to go back and correct, as well as things that we really liked from that process. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. What I'd like to do is kind of fill that thought process out with the next slide. And if we kind of focus on the top goals first, historical goals, transportation goals, and accessibility goals seem to be the big three that kind of overarching umbrella of transportation related, project related goals here. So each project may have a tiered approach for each of the goals, and we're going to find that a lot of these will be in conflict. Most historically sensitive to least historically sensitive may not, it will be addressed at each section of the project that's appropriate. Transportation goals will range from high need for physical change to accommodate the transportation goals down to least or no need for physical change, and accessibility goals from the highest need down to a potential for a waiver for a basically identified lowest need or inability to meet with accessibility goals. So those would be applied to each and every part of the project, and it's important to understand the locations. These projects can vary, and I kind of give people a visual to look at a project that could be something, let's say, from Broad Street to Francis Street, South Water to Washington. Basically, that stretch from Broad to Francis would go through what we would classify as the three separate locations here. Most historically sensitive areas, such as the Cobblestone Main Street area, to the second tier, which is sort of a fringe to the historic district corridor, to a third tier, which is essentially areas that have little or even no sidewalk and have the least historically sensitive areas. And so a project like that may, and I bring it up because it has a real high transportation goal. It's the primary truck route. So there's a lot of different things that are going to be in conflict and at odds that we're going to have to work through, and we'll have to look at the goals for each piece of the project, not necessarily paint it as a project-wide brush, and which is why we leave standards at the bottom. Through this process, we'd like to, and we believe it's appropriate to start to develop standards to apply to each of these areas as we move down through the project development. Areas that will have sensitivities, and we'll look at things like not just preserving the materials that are there, but the methodologies and with construction, down to what do we provide for new materials if we are introducing new sidewalk or supplementing existing historical materials with new materials. And so working together with the partners that we've developed in the work group, and also the permitting authorities such as the HDC and others, we've already started to get feedback from those groups on what new materials could be, should be, and it's in my opinion, it's moving forward very well. Love to get some feedback and questions, and I'd certainly invite the members of the work group to come forward to be present for that and to provide their own opinions on how the work group is moving forward.
I don't have any questions, but I think this is a great visualization of making a process that seemed a little messy and chaotic a lot more straightforward. So I really appreciate this.
Thank you. One thing I forgot to add was the third slide, which was actually just a highlight of the HDC's Historic District Core, which is highlighted in blue. It was, I believe, the work group's opinion that rather than reinventing the wheel, that it was significantly easier to simply adopt the blue highlighted core as the #1 most historically sensitive area, and then beyond that we can start to really flesh out what the second tier and what the third tier is. And I'd like to highlight that a member of the work group, Holly Backus, made an excellent point that there should be should be extra effort to sort of pay attention to the transition between each of those zones, so we don't have sort of an abrupt change, which I thought was excellent. So just want to point that out.
And I guess I have a question. How is HDC or Historical Commission, if it's going to be re-energized, how are they inserted in the process? Are they in the initial review or the?
So with any of these projects, these are public projects.
Right.
So any of them can participate at any and all levels. I would expect certainly that they would be involved at each of the review points, and beyond that, certainly as much as they deem necessary. We've certainly involved HDC as of recent with all the projects that we've been working on. I think that's been a positive, and we've gotten some good feedback.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention that as a planner as well as a preservation by degree, this is a good start. It's a good foundation for the fact that we have this tiered concept. I do want to mention about HDC. We do, unfortunately, the chair has not been able to be involved with our meetings, and they just appointed a HDC member. Unfortunately, she has not been able to be a part of the process, but there is a member of the HDC that is on the work group. This, in my humble opinion, this type of work group is really what the Historical Commission would have been doing if it was still active. So with that said, I think as staff, at least we would be helping in that regards. There are other locations that are historic of nature that have done some similar things like this. Savannah, Georgia is a prime example that have dealing with this type of issues. I think we need to flesh out a little bit more. This is, like I said, this is a great start in the right direction. We have some type of process to be done. But one thing that I wanted to note for the board that Savannah, Georgia was able to figure out, okay, what are our goals? What are we trying to do? And I think from the work group's perspective, we need to maybe do that a little bit more. Instead of just doing the site specific, what are we doing for this project? What is the overall goal? What are we trying to achieve? As well as figuring out with what are the obstacles. I'll give an example. Today, I was on a little tour with a couple of preservation colleagues today, and there was Union Street, for instance, and there was a power pole in the way. If that power pole wasn't there, that accessibility from an ADA standpoint, from just walking on it, would have been fine. So those are, we may want to take that into consideration as we're going to be discussing at some point what National Grid wants to do, and do we want to get those power poles away and bury the lines. Those will actually help us with this transportation of sidewalks. So that's just my 2 cents.
Mary Longacre, not part of the work group, but did attend some of the DPW presentations before the work group was established. And I can certainly see how this process would be valuable on a project like the area from Broad Street to Francis Street. But I wonder if there's a 10-foot section of sidewalk that's broken, Does it have to go through this process, or can it simply be fixed with a work order? What's the scale at which this process would apply, and when would something be expedited because it presented a clear and present danger? I have friends recently who have tripped on bad spots in the sidewalk and broken bones, and I'd hope that those could be repaired more quickly than with 10 steps, including 5 reviews, and I don't know how long that would all take.
That's an excellent question. Frankly, it's something that we deal with not on a regular basis, or I should say not on a daily basis, but on a, unfortunately, too regular basis. I think it's clear that the community is committed to improving its sidewalks. We didn't get here in a day, and we're not going to fix it in a day. We have some severe limitations with our ability to produce work with staff shortages at DPW. And frankly, when we hire contractors to do the work, based on a plan that's been developed over the past 10 years, I think the real challenge becomes when the economy is booming, our contractor is not there. So we've seen that this spring, where the contractor shut down to go to do private work. And, there's some real challenges here that don't exist elsewhere that is also adding to our ability to get at these situations. So this is part of the discussion. There's lots of different layers to this cake, and I think it's a good time to look at it project by project. We're working through all kinds of challenges, again, with staffing and with being able to get regular maintenance baked into what we do on a project by project basis too.
You guys did do a great job. We had a complaint around the Athenaeum, and you guys did straighten out a sidewalk and, made it very possible for someone who used it regularly. That was,
and
so there are issues like that that do happen.
Matt, but the real issue is that's something that we're not able to dedicate staff to on enough of a time of a basis, and that stuff exists really
Everywhere.
all over downtown.
Right.
Hi, I'm Michael May. I'm from the Nantucket Preservation Trust. I'm part of the work group, and I just wanted to say that I think the framework is a really good document, and we have a lot of work to do, as Rob knows, and I think there will be a lot of discussions about materials and the actual process that we need to work out. I do think it's a really good thing that the idea of transitional areas were brought up. That's a real concern of the NPT. You want the area to blend together, the old and the new. And so we really think that the historic material should take precedence. So everything should be seen through the eyes of our historic integrity of the district. I think that's happening so far, and we hope it will continue. And we really think that the goal of the project should be that we're going to be a national model and something that we all can support and be proud of. Thanks.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, 2020 annual town meeting. There's a draft timeline in your packet. I reviewed it with the sort of key players. The dates seem to be okay. It looks as though with some of the way the holidays fall in the calendar that it is time for another Saturday, perhaps. So I've built this around Saturday, April 4th. If we wanted to move into the following week, that is possible instead and start Monday, April 6th. However, we're going to quickly run into some religious issues. So we probably want to avoid that. So just taking you quickly through the timeline, it's a lot of the usual items, when dates are advertised and when the warrant's open for citizen submittals and things like that. This is really early to be talking about this. This is probably the earliest we've ever done this. So just, FYI. A lot of things can change between now and then. A couple of things that I just wanted to point out include that we had a joint capital program committee, joint finance committee select board meeting a few weeks ago, a follow-up town meeting, if you all remember. And one of the things we talked about was the schedule for the capital projects. Capcom is meeting tomorrow. They're probably going to have a bit of discussion about their schedule. I've met with the chair, and we are working on a bit of a revision to that I think will enhance it, which might add, for example, some smaller meetings with reps from those three groups, Capcom, FinCom, Select Board, that talk sort of about how the schedule's going, how the review is going, if there are any issues that we need, to discuss, and then report back out each group to their full boards. And with regard to the Select Board rep, we talked about, in order to get, to sort of operationalize or institutionalize or formalize the reporting back, that the Select Board's rep to Capcom would report perhaps once a month or maybe even more often to the board with an item on our agenda that says something like Capcom rep report, and then you would get a template of a report that we fill in at the Capcom meeting that you can then publicly talk about, so that there's just more awareness about what the projects are and where we are with the review process. We also talked about, or sooner rather than later, having some review of that with this smaller group that I'm talking about, having some review of bigger projects that are on the horizon that sort of maybe recommendations or approaches can be developed to. For example, there are some big projects on the horizon that are going to need a lot of public outreach. The senior center, the island home, the DPW facility, municipal offices, the public safety garage that did not pass at the ballot. There's another one that I'm not remembering right at the moment, but those are big projects, and those are just some of the projects. There are many more projects that are out there in the capital improvement plan that we need to maybe prioritize a little bit. So the idea anyway is to have a discussion with this group of reps and then bring recommendations back. So I got off the track of the timeline, but those are just some other sort of side things happening. The rest of this timeline, again, is pretty much how it's been, with a lot of stuff not completely finalized as far as dates yet. There's a separate finance committee schedule, Capcom, budget. So if you're good with April 4th, Saturday, April 4th, we would do, I think 9 to 5 is what we previously did, with Monday the 6th as a spillover if need be. The annual town election would then be Tuesday, April 14th. And there's a couple of notes that I have at the end of the timeline that I wanted to just bring your attention to. We will have separate schedules for public outreach timeline, the fiscal 21 budget, FinCom meetings. E-voting, we've talked a little bit about that here, and we had a bit of an internal group that met with a vendor for e-voting, and I think the group was ready to say at the next town meeting, whether it's a special or an annual, let's give it a try. It's a bit pricey, but I think we could probably seek the funds out of the Finance Committee Reserve Fund. So if you're all good with that, I have not heard anybody say, no, let's not do that.
The Saturday helps with that, because we usually finish in one day, and it gets more expensive when you do multi-days.
Yeah.
So I think it's really good timing, personally, to do it when we're doing a Saturday.
Yeah, I'm just, philosophically, I'm not a big fan. I like to see people be accountable and put their hands up. And so, from a process standpoint, and from maybe it'll speed things up, et cetera, but I like people to be accountable. I like you to put your hand in the air and show us how you're voting. And so anyway, I just think, I just think I just think that's important, but we'll see.
I think it's just worth trying it, and then we see how we feel about it.
There is an accuracy of the vote issue as well, not number-wise, with human error with the way it's done now. So you feel okay about Saturday, April 4th. All right, so
Sarah's good.
Sarah's good. She can't wait.
Saturday for the electronic voting is a great idea. And maybe not do it on the Monday spillover, just do it that one day.
And again, I don't mind it for a trial, but I get a little worried. There's so much self-interest at times now and so much sort of self-serving, then people walk out, that if people can hide behind their votes, I just get worried that, you know, if they don't have to be held accountable, I just think, in a way, to their neighbors and their friends. I think that's part of what our town meeting does, is that you stand up and you speak up and you put your hand in the air and say, you know, this is good or bad. And I just think the more we sort of don't have to converse with each other and don't have to look each other in the eye and don't have to, you know, we can be in our phones and in our electronic world, I think the less connected we are in some manner. So, and sort of, anyway, I don't mean to sound like Woody Tash, but
I don't want to get into a long debate about this, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, Matt, but some of the feedback I've gotten about it is that, yes, people want to be able to raise their hand and vote, but the social media fallout from that is sometimes more than people can bear. And no matter how they vote, some people on social media are going to criticize them and berate them and say all kinds of things about it, and they don't really want to deal with it. And they'd rather not go to town meeting if that is going to be the outcome.
I think Matt has good points. The other side of that argument is people will vote what they truly feel electronically and not be worried about that. Dawn's looking at me and I do business with her, so I'm going to vote like Dawn does, and it's the other side of it.
And we'll still be voting by voice first. No? It'll just
It's
be
all done electronically.
I think
if we go
select board should
electronic.
still show everybody who they're voting for. Just throwing that out there.
Even more awkward.
I'm just going to duck it then if I don't have to.
Oh, come on, Matt. We want to see that hand up.
I think it's worth it. One shot. See how it goes. I hear you,
it's
Matt,
not going to
but-
be faster than voice vote, but it does all go to electronic, and it's definitely faster than hand count, like by far. And it's really accurate, and you also can see who's abstaining, which is an interesting thing that we don't have that data right now of who's not voting at all.
No, that's a good
Well,
point.
the numbers of who's abstaining.
Right. No, not the people. not going to
Right.
call out Jason. But it's I think that will be interesting to see as a data point of who chooses not to vote on a certain topic, or how many, not who. So we're good. Yeah.
Do you want to vote on that date for now
Yep.
and endorse the timeline?
I would make a motion to accept the date and endorse the timeline of April 4th, April 5th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion.
I did.
Christie. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, well, now we're back to select boards reports and comments. I was really trying to speed up the meeting.
I'm recusing from the next one.
Okay. This is just a clarification on an issuance of the dangerous dogs order. Sorry, I'm just flipping to it. There was just some confusion expressed about what the order actually says, and there was some wording altered. Do you want?
So I was just going to say, we changed all the shoulds and needs to must. And then, I don't know if you're in favor of this or not, but I changed the first condition just to mirror the one that we did with the other dog hearing, to make it consistent in terms of the confinement.
I thought it was appropriate to put in the names of the dogs, but I don't think we ever discussed things like coyote rollers in that first hearing.
And you didn't, but again, I threw it in there just for consistency's sake. If you don't want that in there, we don't.
I'm
have
just
to
worried
keep it in
about
there.
adding something that we'd never discussed with the owner.
Yeah, I
know
agree.
he's here.
So we might want to just end it then after confined shall mean securely confined.
I mean, I can just say must instead of should and keep the rest of the language as it was.
I think that's fine for.
I think it
Yep.
needs to be consistent with what our discussion was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But keep that in mind for
Next time.
future.
Yeah. Hopefully we don't have future hearings.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Frank, you can come up.
I'm Frank Daly, clearly. In the change of this language, it's become evident that the actual nature of the decision has been changed, insofar as we had a discussion at the conclusion of the last meeting when I had left the room and Chief Pittman brought a separate issue back up, precisely being able to bring my dogs to my office. That was defeated on a split decision. The change in this language makes it so I cannot do that. So I think it's a violation of what was actually discussed in the open meeting. Furthermore, there was a lot of inability to kind of get some more clarity. Someone said something about keeping them on our one property because we only own one property, which isn't true. We do have multiple properties. So I would like to be able to bring them with me to my other property. There's also an appeal in process currently on the original language. So I don't know how that would, changing the language would impact the appeal. For whatever it's worth, that appeal I had to find out existed. I was never told that there was a 10-day appeal process. That's a separate matter that will be taken up during the appeal. But I do want to express the fact that that language change is significantly different than what was discussed in the open meeting. And it actually goes against exactly what was discussed and what was voted upon.
Can I ask a clarification? Do you mean the should go into the must, or all this extra stuff in number one?
I think it's the 164 Hummock, confined to the premises of the owner of 164 Hummock Pond Road.
I think there's a few different layers there, to tell you the truth, between the specific address, the Coyote Rollers and all that, but you've already said that you would take that out because that wasn't discussed. Then there is a big kind of nebulous part here where it's if the dogs must be removed from the property of the owner for veterinary care, for instance, and maybe I shouldn't even bring this up, but that leaves a big opening of what determines must and what is for instance. I think that will be discussed at greater length in the appeal process, but I do want to just point out I'm trying to be compliant through the appeal process. I'm still trying to maintain compliance, but there's some really big openings in the way that this language is, and I don't want to get myself into trouble unnecessarily.
I mean, my take on what we decided was that if they're on the premises of 164 Hummock Pond Road, they have to either be indoors or be in a securely fenced in area, but that he was allowed to travel with them if they were leashed and muzzled to go to other private locations. And we discussed maybe revisiting that decision and did not. But that's my recollection, that there was not a definitive to be confined to the premises of that specific address. I think we can reference the address as being the main residence, but I think the language is a little flawed.
Well, I think your recollection is correct, and this is why I had hoped to clarify it that night, because the police chief's intent was not sort of followed through on with our vote and with our discussion, and I think, that's why I wanted to try to continue it that night, and we didn't get there. So, and I sort of agree with Frank right now, is I think we, if there's going to be a hearing and we're going into, potentially sort of other litigation over this, other issues, we need to be careful how we treat it as a board. I think we have to be careful to make sure that we're following our first thing, and unfortunately, we may have to reopen it. I don't want to, I know people don't want to do that, but we may have to reopen it if if there are aspects in here that are, need to be amended, other than what we sort of did that night and didn't do all the way. So.
I mean, I'd love to clarify the language, but I think that we may need to just let this sit because we're going to be revisiting it in the appeal.
Does that mean we can change it from should to must, but everything else stays the same? Maybe we don't change anything else? Or don't touch it
I
at
kind of
all?
like council's advice on this.
Well, we asked about this, and with the exception of the language that was added, which you've removed now, the advice was you may change the order from should to must, and the appeal will happen as it happens. But
So can we just do the should to must and the should to are and
I'd
leave
be
it at
happy
that?
doing that and taking out the specifics
The
of the
other
coyote rollers and
changes
things.
and the specific.
And then deal with the rest of it in the appeal.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the intent. It was closer to the intent.
Right, the intent has to stay the same.
Yeah.
But then I just need to clarify, by saying must, what specifically is must? And can they go to the office, as we discussed in the open hearing, that yes, they could, or to my other private properties, or something that wasn't discussed, but that falls under the kind of the same concept is I bring them to friends' houses where they have dogs, and it's one of the ways that my dogs actually get exercise. How does that fall under this kind of language?
My understanding is that that's allowed as long as you transport them securely. You put them on a leash, you put a muzzle on, and you can take them to other private properties as long as they're confined. Is that?
Yeah,
I mean,
if
as long
if
as
it's outside, it's leashed and muzzled and to other properties. Like we didn't say confined to just your property. We didn't say that.
we didn't
So
say
that's
that.
not.
I believe the intent of condition number 1 was when the dog is at this property where it lives, it needs to be confined either inside the house or in a fence. It can't run loose on your property. That was the intent of condition number 1.
I think the original language was very clear in that.
And my understanding
Yeah, I
is
think it
from the chief is that you are in compliance.
Right.
And I know we got proof of insurance today. So, is that?
Yeah, that's I
That
just
clear?
want us all to be clear. I mean, the officers are stopping by my house at 8:30 at night. They offered to come by at 5:30 in the morning instead. So I mean, it's a lot of undue pressure here. I mean, you all know I have many young children, and I'm doing everything possible, even in the face of what I think might be some extraneous measures. But I understand I put the public in a difficult situation as well. So I'm trying to be compliant, just trying to get the language right.
Yeah, I think I'm clear on it. Just changing the shoulds to the must, and everything else that we all understood at first meetings all stays the same. And then when the appeal comes in, we'll deal with that.
Okay.
Yeah, and just in number 5, it's should to are, just to be
Yes.
completely clear.
Do you need a motion?
I think so.
Yeah.
Just to, and we'll be resending you the letter.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Okay, next, acknowledgement of an open meeting law complaint that was filed against the board. This was filed on an item that actually we ended up removing from the agenda at that point. Town council's prepared a response. If I may, I actually have a comment on the response because I think it was a little bit misleading. Let me just get to it. It's on page 2. It says, in this case, the select board is in the process of negotiating modification to a license agreement with the Wisconsin Beach Preservation Fund as to beach remediation, so on. We're not in that process right now. This was preemptive of that we might get to that process, and it is legitimate to discuss that in executive session. And one of the reasons we took it off the agenda was it's premature. So I just think that we should take that out.
That one sentence,
Mhm.
alterations of the license.
I just think that we need to clarify that we're not in any active negotiations.
So yeah, just
Yeah.
remove that sentence then, but keep
Or
the.
you could say, in the case where the select board is in the process of negotiating, because you could say something like, in the case where we are,
Yeah.
we're allowed to meet to do this.
Right.
You know, we aren't doing that right now. But, you know, I think it's kind of interesting, because we were being told that you're not allowed to, basically what people are saying is you're not allowed to meet for this. You have to talk in front of you can't physically talk in front of the candidate about a negotiation. You know, and the idea that, oh, it's public and we need the public input and the public needs to know, well, the public can't know. That's why that's why you have this exemption for executive session.
Yeah. And to be clear, I mean, in this instance, if the Concom rules in favor of the expansion, we will be tasked with negotiating the best license agreement we can for the town that will then go to town meeting for a vote. At that point, what we've negotiated will be public, but
Yes.
the process of negotiating will not be able to be in a public meeting. So, but I think we need to clarify the letter, because there's nothing actively happening right now, and people were confused by that.
So do we want to take the sentence out, or do we want to change it to, in the case that the select board?
I see what Matt is, I don't want to tell you what to do, but I see what Matt is saying, but I think that it might be best just to take it out, because that concept that we're talking about could just happen. I don't know that you need to say it.
Yeah. So I would make a motion to remove the sentence that starts with, in this case.
Does that make it?
I
just
think
wanna
you might make the
letter still work. Could we just
I'd ask him to. Why don't we ask the town council to amend his letter? I just don't. I think we lose the meaning, because you take out that sentence and you're jumping right to alterations of a license is allowed. You see what I'm saying? You lose part of you lose some of the flow of the letter. If you take out, in this case, the select is in the process of negotiating, and they blah blah blah. Alterations of license are allowed. If you take out the
well,
lead in,
it might be okay.
I don't know.
I'm reading through it, because it says it would have a detrimental effect on the negotiation position of the body, and then if it jumps to alterations of the license agreement or potential new easements necessarily involve discussions of property value. I think it's okay to just take that out.
And maybe this might be alterations of a license agreement, so it doesn't reference the one in the sentence before.
Either way.
I think
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So with your motion,
yes.
Leah, do you want to move to...
Oh, wait a minute, sorry.
Acknowledge the letter?
Until
Acknowledge
such
the-
time as negotiations with the fund or property owners in Baxter Road area are complete. I mean, it all kind of references that we're in active negotiations.
Yeah, and also,
Can I withdraw my motion then?
Yeah,
for a moment?
could we just work on a revision to this? And
Yeah, you're under a timeline, though.
Yeah, that's the problem.
We have to respond within a certain amount of time.
I think that sentence is okay, though, until such time as any negotiations, because it's any. It's not the, it's not, we're actively negotiating right now. It's if they come up. Which.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
They
I
may.
see that.
Sense to me.
Yeah, okay. So I'll go back to the...
Sorry, I hate rewriting things.
That's fine.
I know.
The table
I
here.
know.
Acknowledges the complaint and send the revised letter that removes the sentence beginning with "in this case," and in the sentence starting with alterations, change the to the first the to a.
Is there a second?
Second.
Good. Ready to vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously as revised. Okay, next up, appointment of a select member to the Affordable Housing Trust Advisory Committee for the Neighborhood First program.
I would make a motion to nominate Christy.
Second.
Good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Yep.
Yeah. That's like, can I vote?
So that motion carries unanimously. Determination as to whether or not to object to Massachusetts State Lottery Commission offer of Keno monitors at Carolina's Mini Mart, 3 Hannaby Lane, Old South Market, 57 Old South Road. And this is for an additional one. They already do have this.
My understanding is that they already have one, yes. So
Motion.
just, oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just going to explain a little bit.
Sure.
Thank you.
So Keno is allowed in Massachusetts, and businesses that want to have it apply directly to the State Lottery Commission for it, and they are required to notify the municipality that a business in their community has been approved for it, if they're approved, and there's an opportunity to object. We've had several of these. There's never been an objection. There's numerous ones already on island. So
What would be the grounds for objecting when people do?
that's a good question. I think we probably looked this up before. Public safety problems. Like excessive gathering or something like that causes disruption to a neighborhood. I don't think we have that.
Is it motion to accept or is it motion to not deny? Which one?
You actually don't need to do anything.
Oh, nothing.
If we're
Oh,
not
okay.
objecting, it's just
To not object.
acknowledged.
I will
yeah.
say nothing.
Nothing.
All right, committee reports.
None.
Anybody got anything?
Nope. Nope. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.